Hey everybody! Matthew Turner, Ash Soden, Anthony Fitzpatrick, Roar of the Lions UK, a couple of other people to come in, so we're just waiting for those now. Hope you've had a good Easter weekend. We're just setting up here. Guys, how you doing?
Good, good. Looking forward to scoffing some chocolate later.
Mine did not survive beyond Saturday, I don't think. I knew I had it, so it disappeared.
I
Oh.
did not make use of my 20% colleague discount at Sainsbury's to buy a lot.
I love it. Um, I didn't really know how to make us all fit on, so we're in like a little kind of banner in the lower third, and I'm hoping that people will be able to see us, but I thought it was more important the pics were seen. But if you guys want to have a look at the live stream and see what you think, and
Yeah, I'm on there now and it looks okay, my opinion.
also, Ant, I want to show you something that I found from Streamlabs, which is a little social sharer, little graphic in the bottom right of the lower third of the stream. It comes up with a nice little animation with like YouTube as an icon and then our name on it and stuff like that, as opposed to, I don't know. I've changed the ticker as well, but I think it looks pretty cool.
Okay, that's cool.
Tom says he's going to be 1 minute. Derek Bo Barrack and Ashley Soden on the Twitch chat.
Because you said you had the chat box up, so I was going to be like, I'll watch it, and then if there's any questions, I'll copy and paste them onto the planning doc from my phone for you.
Oh, I get the chat room itself on
Oh,
Streamlabs when I'm in here. No, 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 don't worry about that. It's all good. I like someone in there answering the chat anyway, but I can see the Twitch chat and reply to the Twitch chat in here, and then I have YouTube on my screen. I've got so much stuff I can't keep track of it, to be honest. Okay, can see my cursor. Who are we waiting for? Waiting for Steve, waiting for Tom. I have not yet done the giveaway. Apologies, I was trying to get it done today, but with all the housework I've been doing in the garden and stuff, I have not got there. So I'm going to try and run that tomorrow, and then we'll get the next one live for next week's show. Something like that. How's your weekend, Ryan?
It was all right, yeah. Bradford won today. That's always good. 2 points off automatic promotion. So
Oh.
I am ready to get hurt again because I know we're going to fuck it up, and that it will break me. Another year in League Two. I don't have it in me.
Yeah, that's fair. I might rearrange how this looks because it doesn't look great. Give me a second to think about how to make this work. Right, we'll move that there. Move that. How are we going to make that work? Hey, how you doing, Tom? You alright?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all good.
Excellent.
All good. Oh, that's not going to work. Damn. Okay. That's not any better. Alright, this is just going to suck for being able to actually see us. But never mind. Who needs people on a video podcast? Not necessary.
Which bit are you changing?
Well, I was trying to make it so that we could see the pics and see us, but because the writing's going to be quite small as it is. If you're in the live chat and when we go through, it's not quite big enough, you can't really see it, then let me know and I'll try and fix that. Although, arguably, I've done the best I can at this point. Tom, how was Japan?
It was fantastic. I'm hanging in there in terms of jet lag. I feel pretty good, but yesterday I was watching the Masters and just hit a hard crash at about 10 p.m. So, but no, Japan was incredible. I've been there once before. I just absolutely love the place. And right, it sounds like you're thinking of going as well.
Yeah, we're on about booking for next year.
Love that.
We have a trip booked to Miyajima where you went, and I've had it ready to go for like since COVID.
That Miyajima was probably my highlight of the trip, and I'd been to some of the other areas before, so it's partly that I hadn't been there before, but it was just such a cool little spot. Other guys, I guess, who maybe don't know as well. So it's right by Hiroshima, and you basically take a little ferry over. There's like a floating gate, which is quite like a famous visual of Japan, but you take this ferry over. It's just very chilled over there, and we were literally just sat having a beer, watching the sunset kind of thing. It was super, super cool.
One problem is I ain't got a clue where to go. Like say Shinjuku, Shibuya. I don't. The regions it looks confusing.
It is a little, but then you also can't go too far wrong. So, like, I when I was in Tokyo, I based myself in Shinjuku this time. I did the same last time, and it's great. But you can get around it all so easily. And even just getting around the country is really easy. So you can't go too far wrong. I wouldn't worry.
I can send you the plan that we made if you want, having not actually used it. I don't know whether it'll be any help, but there was one thing that I read that said a good place to base yourself out of if you want to see more than just Tokyo is to base yourself in Osaka. Even though there's not a huge amount to see in Osaka. Oh, was it Osaka or was it Kyoto? It was Osaka.
And Osaka probably makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and then commute to like Kyoto for just days if you want to, because they're quite close together. Or
you can get from, especially if you've got the travel pass, you can get from Kyoto to Osaka in 15 minutes. And it's 2.5 hours east to Tokyo, an hour and a half east to Hiroshima. Osaka's like, if you were going to go live somewhere, that's probably the city you'd live in. Like Tokyo is obviously very chaotic and things. Osaka's just a really like cool place, to be honest. And yes, there's touristy areas, but then you walk like 3 or 4 streets the other direction and you just feel like you're in a normal living and breathing city. So yeah, super cool.
Just checking up on Steve. We've started our interviews at 8, but I'm thinking he might think it's the 7th. Sorry, yeah, an 8 o'clock start, not a 7:30 start. So we shall see. Steve did mention as well that this was like a super long episode last time because we went into long explanations as to who people were and what have you. So
I went back and so I may have this wrong. I think this was quite long, but also we interviewed Ollie Hodgkinson at the start, which was like a good 45 minutes or an hour. So that's why I think it looked longer. When we did the full first round mock draft, it was like a 4-hour episode. So I think that one took a long time. Did anyone go out and get any reduced Easter eggs today?
Oh, no. Hell yeah.
Love that. Because I wasn't really around. I landed yesterday. So that was like my early this morning, get out and look for reduced Easter eggs.
It's the best part of the year, that is. Just wait a week and, you know, you can have them as much as you want, as cheap as you want. It's wonderful. You have enough for months.
What did you go for?
Oh, I have all sorts. I do, but I managed to find a load of Galaxy Minstrel ones, and I fucking love those. So I've got like 4 of them. I've got a couple of Toffee Crisp ones as well. I'm like, right, that'll last me a good couple of weeks. That will.
Toffee Crisp, that's a throwback. I love
that. Toffee Crisp.
Yeah, criminally underrated.
Yeah, it's oh yeah, there's some good stuff at the minute, but I've got plenty for weeks now, so it's always a great time, and it cost me like $5 or something. It wasn't that much at all.
Morrison's have been selling most of their Easter eggs until Easter week at like 50% off anyway. So I literally have had 10, 11 Easter eggs through the last like 2.5 months. Just like go and do weekly shop, buy one, eat it, go next week, buy another one. It's been great. I've had an amazing time.
I found the greatest thing in Sainsbury's today, a Caramac version of Munchies.
Mm.
They are absolutely, they're new and they're absolutely
Oh.
fucking phenomenal. I bought a pack today and I'm like, right, I'm going to go back and buy some more tomorrow.
Can you
But-
still buy a Caramac?
Yeah.
You can get, you see, it's great. You can get original Caramac and you can get Dairy Milk's version Caramilk, which is actually pretty nice as well.
Yeah.
But you can still get old school Caramac. Yeah, beautiful. It's on a renaissance now. It's getting put in everything.
Interesting. I used to love a Caramac, but I haven't had one in ages.
Yeah, I love
Oh,
Caramac.
still-
One of my faves.
Still as good as you'll remember. They really are.
Oh, can we do?
Trust the Scotsman to be late.
Yeah, he just thought that it was 8 o'clock start.
Nah, I think he's just being a diva.
Well, I mean, I'm not ruling that bit out.
Internet connectivity north of the border takes some time, so
Still using dial-up, yeah.
yeah.
The social ticker thing that you've got on the stream, it looks very good as well. The little flip.
Cool. I'm glad. I mean, it will cover up some of the mock when it comes up, but it cycles every 3 minutes, which I don't think is too overbearing.
Yeah, it's over mine anyway. You don't need to. You can probably guess who all of my picks are, so you don't really need to see mine.
Is yours the Homer mock?
Yes, every single player is no. It's just people that I just like talking, like I like and talk about a lot. So
Fair.
Like that. You're quite quiet for me, Ash.
Yeah, you're very quiet, Ashley.
it's this new mic. It's because I've actually got like a proper mic like you guys instead of my headset, so it's a bit. I'm getting used to it.
Yeah.
Audio settings. Get up a bit. There we go. Is that better?
A little, yeah.
Yeah.
Still quite
Oh,
quiet,
okay.
but you'll just have to probably speak a bit closer to it.
There.
I'm going to turn the ticker off and it'll give us some more room. There we go. Has to be done. Sorry for the delay, everyone, to the show. We'll be starting in just a moment. Yeah, a few people now said Ash's volume is low, but I think that's on a delay. Let's just say again for me.
Hello.
That was better, but not
Better.
not amazing, but good.
Yeah. It's one of them things. Hopefully, it doesn't. I can mess around with the audio as we go in and hopefully find a sweet spot.
Yeah. What happens if I... No, that's no good.
Ash, do you have a separate mic then?
Yeah. So I
And
used to
you've
have the
checked-
headset, didn't I?
Yeah. And so you've checked just if you go on that arrow next to mute that it's pulling through it.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to check it wasn't pulling through the headphone mic or something instead.
Hope not. Yeah, it's definitely this one. Yeah. God. Do.
Hello!
Hey, man.
How we doing?
All good. How are you? Thanks for turning up.
Yeah, been away abroad internationally on business. You know, just floating about.
Tom's jet.
Mysteriously.
What's your excuse? He was here on time.
Exactly. I needed to get this over with as quickly as possible. This is the equivalent of 20 to 6 in the morning.
Ouch.
I mean, what time zone are you in?
Who knows?
You're in Croydon, aren't you?
Right, so me and Steve were talking about the show before, and just in terms of format, if we keep the commentary about the pick itself, maybe to just not a minimum, but just briefly describe the rationale, I guess, and then at the end of every round or end of every pick, maybe we can kind of all just natter about whose we like, whose we don't like, or whatever, and kind of make it a kind of round table thing at the end of each one, and then maybe at the end we can just recap that, and that should keep it not short because it's going to be long anyway, but not it won't be a 4-hour show if we do that.
I want to see Tom rationalise Luke Musgrave at 6 in 30 seconds. That would just show you how skilled he is.
Well, and then Mook Musgrave at the end of the draft. Yeah.
Very childish, some people.
Right, so we'll go snake style, and we'll start from left to right. So Ant will be first when we go into it. News, we'd just talk about Teddy Bridgewater, and then we're straight into it. Cool.
I thought you were trading up for Musgrave, Tom.
I still might do it. Last minute.
All right, ready to go?
Yeah.
Yep.
Here we go.
Beep, beep, beep.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to another edition of the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, episode 187, Lords of Mock. My name's Matthew Turner, alongside Ryan and Ash, Tom, and Steve. How you doing, boys?
Good, thank you.
Doing good.
Getting closer.
I can't imagine. When was the last time the six of us were all on together?
I was going to say the same. This maybe even the first time. Full house almost.
The annual awards show, maybe?
True.
Quite a lot of us here for the annual awards.
But even
The
so,
OCD in me does appreciate the symmetry of 2x3.
all right. This is the Roar of the Lions UK podcast. We are doing our 7-round Lions only mock draft today, and then next week we'll be doing a full first round mock draft, which will serve as our predictor for the mock for the real thing itself. So you want to check in today for this, and next week for that one too. Just a bit of preamble before we start. Discord channel is really ramping up, so do go and join us there. I'll put a link in the chats in YouTube and Twitch in just a moment. College football podcast, and Ryan, is there going to be one this week? Got anything up your sleeve?
There should be. We're doing a Mac show. So Mac Draft Prospects, Mac 2022. So that'd be fun. I don't know what day, but we should definitely be doing one.
Fantastic. All right, please don't forget to like the show, sub to the podcast, which is always a really big help to us. And don't forget to download the app at lionsnationunite.com. It's Herman Moore's project to bring the best in Lions content creators together. We are a Twitch affiliate, so if you've got Amazon Prime, please don't forget to, for free, just chuck us a couple of dollars. That'd be much appreciated. And we are also now monetized on YouTube, so that means that just by watching us, you're really helping us out. So much appreciate you. And also, if you want to ask us any questions, you can also do a super chat in there, which is great. There's also a feedback form and a tip jar. And our giveaway has now closed. I'm going to run the tombola for the winner for that in the early part of this week. And then our new giveaway for getting to 1,000 subs, hence us being monetized, will start running probably at the start of next week. So keep tuned, stay tuned for that in terms of how to enter. It'll be probably exactly the same as the one that we've just done. A little bit of news before we reveal our picks, and that is that the Lions have reportedly made a strong offer to quarterback Teddy Bridgewater per ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. Boys, what does this say about what the Lions might be doing in the draft? What do you think about Teddy as QB2? What does a strong offer mean? I mean, there's so much to talk about here and unpack. What do you reckon, Tom? Let's go with you first, since you might fall asleep by the end of this.
Makes a change for people falling asleep to me talking about players. So I'd be really surprised, and admittedly, I might be a little out of date with the news, so bear with me. But I'd be really surprised if something happened before the draft, because that just limits your options to some extent. And also, if I was the player, I wouldn't want to sign anywhere until after the draft anyway. That being said, I like Teddy a lot as a player. I'd be really interested to see what the offer is. The only reason being, obviously, I don't know what Teddy got last year, but we're only a couple of years removed from him getting some pretty serious money as kind of a fringe starter. So I'd just be intrigued as to what resources we would be putting towards it. But Teddy as a player, obviously history with Campbell, I would really like it. It's always a tight tightrope whether you overinvest in the backup quarterback situation. But I think we've obviously seen what happens when you don't, or when you invest in Chase Daniel. So it would be quite a refreshing change of pace to know we had a really ready to go solution that hopefully you never really have to use, let's be honest. But a lot of it would come down to contract for me. I really like him as a player.
So Teddy got 6.5 mil last year, just to put it in
Okay.
there. Yeah.
I thought it would be more than that. So in which case, if we're talking in that kind of range, I'm in. I think it's when it's more like 10, I have more questions.
Anyone else?
I mean, let's face it. He'd be the best backup quarterback we've had since I had hair. So that kind of explains the detail of what you need to know. You need a good backup, and we're going to be in a season this year where we want to win the NFC North. So you've got to have someone who can step in if Goff goes down injured, because we can't afford to waste a season if Goff goes down injured. And with Teddy under helm, you could win games. Just lean on your run game a bit more, get him to do a load of the easy things. You can win games with him, so I'd be fine with it. And if it means paying a little bit more of money for him, so be it. He is infinitely much better than that waste of space, Chase Daniel, and I would happily pay him as such.
The only problem is when Tua went down, he didn't win games for the Dolphins. That kind of worries me. Like, he would be the better backup we've had for plenty of time, but I couldn't give him any more than $5 million. A strong offer tells me we're going to overpay. So if it's any more than that, pass. And if we did sign him before the draft, that'd be a huge red flag. I don't want to sign any QB before the draft. Whether I want to draft one or not, I'd just rather leave the options open and gain more leverage in contract negotiations as well. If he's really struggling for spots after the draft, I'd lowball him, like you say. And if you do pick someone in the draft, pull the offer, pull the rug from under his feet. So I think we have to be careful. But yeah, anyone is better than Sudfeld. Let's be perfectly honest.
Apart from Tim Boyle.
No, Tim Boyle's better than Nate Sudfeld. I actually genuinely think that.
I mean, I think in terms of, I can't see Teddy signing for us before the draft. He would be crazy from his point of view to sign with us when we're picking at 6. So I kind of think that this is probably just hot air at the moment. But we've obviously shown an interest in him, and as Ant said, we've got a window to win with Goff and this O-line. So you absolutely wouldn't want, someone stepping on Goff's ankle in week 1, and then all of a sudden it's a shit show. So it does seem like a sensible move, but I kind of think from Holmes's point of view, he's not going to want to make any kind of move that shows even a hint of his draft board. So I'll be very surprised if anything happens in the next 3 weeks.
I mean, given how he played last year, you can't expect more than 6.5. So, assuming that he's taking less than that, I'm kind of okay with it. But I don't think it affects our draft at all. Like, if we sign him for 5 and then we draft Anthony Richardson, I can see it. I really can, because while I think you should start A-Rich, it's still a popular thought that you shouldn't, and you should sit him. So if he's going to be QB3 as a developmental guy, fine. That hasn't changed anything, and you've got a high floor backup to come in and do something in year 1. I don't think that tips your hand at all, particularly. It just depends which quarterback you take. I don't think you take Teddy Bridgewater and then draft Tanner McKee, but I do think you draft Anthony Richardson. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one, but yeah. Anyway, let's get on with the draft. So, we're going to go in snake order. We're starting on your screens from the top left, and then we'll snake to Ash, and then Ash will have 2 picks in a row, and then it'll snake back to Ant. Obviously, if you're on the audio pod, you can't see that, but obviously we'll be talking about it, so hopefully that won't make too much difference. Ant, you are on the clock at 6.
So I don't know whether anyone else did, but I traded the pick because I completely hate 6. I don't like being there at all. I only traded down to 8. It was just a minor one with the Falcons. I do believe there is a rationale behind this. The way they've gone at this offseason free agency, I think they think there's a window open in that NFC South for them to go and win it. And I think whether one of the big developmental quarterbacks is still at 6 or one of the top tier defensive prospects is still there, if they want to go in on Carter, someone like that, I think they'll come up for him. So I took their 2 4th-round picks as payment for that, and I traded down to 8. And then at 8, I drafted Devon Witherspoon, quarterback from Illinois. I feel a little bit better about taking him at 8 than I mean, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. And I'm not going to go on, because we've talked about him on this show forever. It's the best outside man coverage corner in this draft. Lions need one. We're short of options at corner after this year. Lock up your guy for next year. Lock up your guy for the next 5 years. But yeah, I'm 100% taking him there.
All right. Ryan, you're up.
So, number 6, this player has garnered tons of criticism, and I'm just not buying it. At 6, I've stayed put, and when Jalen Carter falls, I scoop him up. And despite everything I've heard about him, like say potentially not liking football, being a bag of egg, being lazy, I believe he's still behind Will Anderson Jr., the best defensive prospect in the class. And with bugs on minor deals like Kaminsky, Benito, guys like that, I want a long-term partner for Lee McNeil. I want the best interior possible, and Jalen gives me that from day one. I genuinely think he's a day one starter, and he creates pressure from the interior. I think he's had a blip, and I'm banking on him overturning it, and I can't let him fall. I can't let him risk the Bears taking him, because I don't want to play him twice a year in the division.
I'm up next, and I'm taking defensive end Will Anderson. I am buying into the Tyree Wilson over Will Anderson early. I think Jalen Carter will go before Anderson because someone like Seattle will take that sort of guy. Quarterbacks fill up the rest of them, so the best outside guy for me in the class falls to us on the defensive line. And I mean, maybe there's some redundancy there with him and Hutchinson, but you make it work and you've got one of the best edge tandems in the NFL. Steve.
Yeah, so I think that there is going to be, I think the Cardinals are going to trade their pick. And I think someone's going to come up to take Richardson or Levis at 3. And I think that could give us an opportunity for Anderson or Carter. And I think if Anderson or Carter were there at 6, I would have to take either of them, like whichever one has fallen to 6. I think those are the 2 best defensive players in the draft. And this draft for me is about defense. But I think that maybe things won't play out and we will have to pick at 6. And I wouldn't risk trading down because I think the player that's there at 6, like, don't overthink it. Do not overthink this pick. And I think if Devin Witherspoon is there at 6, I would absolutely take him straight away without any hesitation. I think if you try and trade down, there's just so much at risk, so much at play. And for me, Witherspoon is just a fantastic pick. Culture, how he plays, it's exactly what we need. Don't overthink it.
Tom.
Yeah, so I worked off the basis that I thought Anderson, Stroud, Young would be gone at this point, and really it came down to 2 players for me. Jalen Carter, I think, is the best on-field player in the draft. And honestly, I'll be delighted if we get him. And I was really torn. Like, lots of me were saying I should go for him. But I didn't. I went for Anthony Richardson. And the reason being, I'm really excited about this Lions team. And it's very easy to get wrapped up in we can become Super Bowl contenders this year, etc. And I'm not ruling that out. It's been talked a lot about how the Lions are a great landing spot for Richardson. He can sit behind Goff, etc. All of that is true. But I think the other part to remember here is, for the first time in a long time, we have had a front office that has drafted well. We have a lot of talent, homegrown talent, let's say, drafted talent, and we're going to need to pay that talent. Now, Goff, this is not a slight on Goff, and I think it's too easy to assume if you want to take a quarterback, it means that you don't like Goff. I still see Goff being the quarterback this year. I still probably see him being the quarterback next year. I am not sure we can pay him his next contract and keep the talented players around him, whether that's our O-line, whether that's the future of Hutch and other people. And so I think the upside of taking Richardson, and even if it doesn't work out, and it may well not, you've still got that risk with Carter. You've got that risk with Witherspoon. You've got that risk with all these guys. I'm willing to take the gamble because I believe in Richardson as a player. And I believe that in 2 years' time, he will be ready to go. and we can then pay the guys around him and still give him this incredible setup that we think exists today. So I'm sure we'll probably talk about that. I'm sure there's going to be lots of angry people in the comments as well. But that's really my rationale for Richardson.
And Ash finishing off at 6.
So for me, it were the 5 picks in front were Stroud, Young, Richardson, Anderson, and Carter, which left me in a difficult position. I had Witherspoon on the board, I had Tyree Wilson on the board, and I had Levis on the board. So I didn't overthink it. I just took the player who would have been top of my board, even though it might be seen as a bit of a reach considering the dirt for talent we've got in free agency at this position. But I picked cornerback Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois because, as Ant pointed out, he's the best man coverage corner in this class, and he would fit exactly what we want out of our DBs with what Glenn wants to do. So for me, I didn't overthink it. At 18, was this tough one. I honestly wanted to trade out. I didn't like the options there. Branch went just before at 17. So I was in a bit of two minds whether to trade, but I couldn't get a realistic offer I liked. So I decided to take someone for the future, but and could be a plug-and-play starter if we needed, with interior offensive lineman O'Cerence Torrance from Florida, who could be our guard of the future if we choose to move on from Vita Glasgow next year, or if we don't choose to pay Jonah. So I got 6 Devin Witherspoon and then 18 O'Cerence Torrance.
All right, we'll go back down the line and then have a look at the first round as a whole. So, Tom.
Yes. So when it came to this, and I think we mentioned at the top, but this is more around what we would do rather than what we think is going to happen. And I'll be honest, I don't think either of these picks are probably going to happen for the Lions. There were 2 guys again for me here. One is someone who doesn't really ever get mocked to the Lions. I just think is a really good player in Nolan Smith. So I haven't gone for him. A lot of people would say that doesn't get James Houston on the field. It's the same argument with if you draft Will Anderson. If you've got talented players, you will find a way to get them on the field. If we draft Will Anderson, doesn't mean James Houston just disappears. And I think the thing with Nolan Smith is he's such a good run defender, even though he's lighter, makes him a good option. Didn't go in that direction, but he was my other guy. I went Brian Branch. Brian Branch is someone who I think genuinely could fall out of the first round. Didn't test superbly. He's not particularly exciting, etc., etc. He's just a damn good football player. And I know that that's a cliche, but I just love him. I have him listed as cornerback, even though other people have him listed as safety. That's purely because I think he's going to play the nickel mostly. So you can give him any designation you want. Yes, we signed CJ Gardner-Johnson. He's here for 1 year. It's unrealistic he's here past that. If he is, great. And I think with the cornerback room, as with the defensive line as well, yes, we have guys now, but we're starting to think about what happens in 2024. We're trying to build a juggernaut for the next 5 years here. And I think Brian Branch is going to be a superb football player. And as a result, even if he didn't see the field loads this year, and I think he still would, but even if he didn't, I think he's everything the Lions want in a player. He's smart, he's tough, he does everything well. And he frees up other guys. Like there's a chance we might have to play Cam Sutton in the slot rather than outside. I would rather have Cam Sutton outside. CJ Gardner-Johnson, if you want to play him more off ball, like he did last year in Philly, then you need another guy to play in the nickel. So, yeah, I love Brian Branch as a player.
And Steve. You are muted, sir.
So I said that this was a draft for the defense, but I'm just going to make an exception with this pick. I've obviously gone with Witherspoon at 6, and I would ideally like to get a tackle round about 18, but I'm not sure that the value is there. However, I do think always with the draft, you should be, strengthening in the trenches wherever you can. And we know that the success of the Lions in the last, second half of the season was very much dominated by our offensive line. We know that the O-line is going to need to evolve because we can't pay everyone. And I think we've got a real opportunity to strengthen that. And that's why I'm going to go for Tennessee's Darnell Wright at 18. He's a monster. He's 6'5", he's 330 pounds, and he's absolutely handled Will Anderson on several occasions. And I think that by adding this piece to the O-line just strengthens our QB play. It gives Goff that extra protection, and this is a pick for the future as well.
So it's on to me next, and having taken Will Anderson first, I'm now kind of prioritising perhaps secondary talent, which I was kind of hoping to take with a trade down, but it didn't materialise. And, some of the top corners came off the board before this, so I'm faced with a situation of perhaps going down to that lower tier, but I'm really high on this guy that I kind of zeroed in on. Bijan had already gone as well, Branch had already gone. It was a really weird draft, but it works out that way sometimes. So I've ended up taking Deontay Banks from Maryland. You've seen the videos of him in his highlights where he just kind of absolutely bullies some guys at the line. He's potentially the most physical guy at corner, not in terms of like physical traits, although he's an absolute beast as well, but like in terms of physically imposing his will on an offensive player, he's absolutely that guy. He plays much bigger than his size. So I think in him, the Lions actually could get what they were hoping they were going to see from Jeff Okudah all those years ago. Ryan, you're up.
Yeah, I've got the same thinking as you. I've gone for a cornerback. I've gone the guy that is the most aggressive and I think the best of the line of scrimmage and has the build. Joey Porter Jr., all 6'2" of him. I think he's an absolute animal. He's sticky like glue. He uses his hands well, line of scrimmage. He gets in their face. He gives them a good pop, makes them know they're there, and he's a nice, savvy route runner. So yeah, there's hardly any corners under contract 2024. We've got to fix that, and that starts now.
And Ant, you do have the pick at 18, don't you?
Yes, I do. It's just fourth rounds from here that are different to the rest of you. So yeah, with my second pick, I've agreed with one of the panel. I've also taken Brian Branch, safety / corner hybrid from Alabama. The only thing smoother than this guy's technique playing football is the voice that Tom uses to so well describe how great a player that he is. And he, like Tom said, and I can't really go too much further on this, the position he can play in this defense for us is absolutely critical. And the guy that we've got here now, as he said, is on a 1-year deal. You've got to keep looking for the future. So I've taken 2 DBs, but after next year, it's just Cam, Iffy, and Chase Lucas under contract at corner. And you've only got Kirby really coming through the ranks at safety. So you've got to keep injecting talent in there to sustain your long-term future. And even if you have Branch and CJG here at the same time, the stuff that you can do with them, they're so versatile. They can both see the field. Branch is learning off one of the best at this role in the team. And, if CJG plays really well this year and we can't pay him, we've got his replacement. So we've saved ourselves for 2024. So I would absolutely take Branch here. So Branch and Witherspoon, my secondary is cast iron. Got tons of competition in it this season, and I will be really looking forward to seeing what it could do with AG overseeing them all.
All right, so to recap the first round, Anthony Fitzpatrick traded down from 6 to 8, took Devon Witherspoon and Brian Branch at 8 and 18 respectively, picking up 2 mid or early 4th round picks in return. Ryan took Jalen Carter and Joey Porter Jr. I took Will Anderson and Deontay Banks. Steve took Devon Witherspoon and Darnell Wright. Tom, Anthony Richardson and Brian Branch. And Ash, Devon Witherspoon and Osiris Torrance. Fellas, what do we reckon about these mocks? Who's done well? What don't we like? I guess the trade is the big one to kind of start off with. Is that good value for going down 2 picks?
I love that value. I mean, anything day 3 is really a dart throw, but look at those darts that Holmes has thrown over the last couple of years, right? We've got Amon-Ra, Houston, obviously, Rodriguez, all of these guys. I would actually, when we go through, there's still positions which I feel like I didn't get to, which I would have loved to have someone in. And that's why you want more throws. I will be really happy if we end up with a few extra day 3 picks. So personally, I think it's great.
That's why I did it. Too many players that I'm like, no, you're not been on my board. You're not been on my board, sorry. You're getting in there somehow.
I don't know whether personally I think that maybe you can get a little more for it. I'm not sure because it's such a small hop. But someone in the chat said, who was it who said it? It was X Lost Oceans X was saying, if they're coming up for a quarterback, then maybe you're hoping to get a little more out of them than otherwise. But, I mean, maybe they're not coming up for a quarterback. I don't know.
So my rationale is I'm dropping 2 places and I'm taking exactly the same player. I had Devon at 6 beforehand, but if I can take Devon at 8, and even if it's just a couple of day 3 picks, I don't care. For me, that represents great value because, like Tom says, that's where we land a lot of our darts. And that's where I love in the draft this year. I hate round 1 this year with a passion. I despise it. I love the middle, though.
So who's got the best 2 players so far in the first round? What do you like the most? Or is there anything you feel like it's unrealistic?
I don't see Anthony Richardson getting to 6. Line him on for Saunders. He's the player I want the most. I think he's going top 2.
I'm intrigued as to the Darnell Wright hype. It's been very big recently, but is it big enough to get him that high? I don't know if I see him going that high, but I think the Lions are 100% interested in him because, he's a right tackle, and if Penne's going to move across eventually, he'll be the guy who stays there and plays that position. So it's interesting. I don't know if, maybe it has. We've seen stranger things with some of these guys here. Zay Flowers is getting mocked near the top 10 now. So who knows?
Yeah.
Oh, you
Go
go,
on.
Tom. Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to hate my hot prediction for the draft, and that the Bears take Darnell Wright at 9 as the first tackle off the board.
That'd be hilarious. But it'd also be a massive upgrade for them.
Exactly.
That might be a bit hot for me in terms of the first tackle off the board, but I could definitely see him in the second or third. I mean, I really think in those 5 picks before the Lions, so when you've got Jets, Patriots, Commanders, and definitely the Steelers, like Wright just feels like he could definitely go in one of those. Actually, in my first draft of this, when I didn't have Richardson going here, Wright was very much penciled in. And then for some of the reasons which I think have been shared elsewhere, but then I think Eric Schlitt shared something about it a couple of days ago. And then it felt like I was just kind of firmly falling on that kind of bandwagon. So I moved it out. I think Richardson at 6 I actually really thought about going to 3, but in general, I don't like to do trades in these. I really thought about going to 3 for that reason of, is he going to be there? We're seeing a lot of mocks where the 4 quarterbacks are going 1, 2, 3, 4. I just don't think that's going to happen. Has it ever happened before? I don't know, but it's very rare you get 4 there. And the seemingly constant buzz is that the Colts love Will Levis. So that was what I worked off for this. But yeah, I think there's a good chance. I still think there's a good chance he goes 1. But yeah, I think there's definitely a world he's not there at 6. I think there will be one of him or Carter there at 6. And they're really the 2 guys I'm zeroed in on the assumption that Anderson and Bryce Young are gone. But I would, this might get me killed, I would be happy trading up to 3 and going and getting him. I just think we're in a position to do that. Obviously, I wouldn't want to mortgage the future for it, and it would hurt because you probably end up giving a 2 this year and obviously more, but as in we want to help this team this year as well. But yeah, I just think he's that special of a prospect, and if you do hit, the upside is so much bigger than any of these other options. And if you don't hit, I just don't think we're that much worse off, right? So anyway, I'm kind of defending my own pick, so that's unfair, but
yeah, I think
no argument here.
I think in terms of variables, like you've got the Texans at 2. Could the Texans trade their pick or pick like best player available and then take a QB at 12 because they got the 12th pick? And I can't see the Colts taking Richardson because I think the Colts are so QB needy, and I think the risk of busting on someone like Richardson it's just too high for them. So I think those are the kind of like variables. But I think in terms of like how the picks are going to fall, talking about Darnell Wright, I think the Raiders, if the Raiders don't trade up, I think they'll take a tackle. I think the Jets will take a tackle. So potentially that may be Paris Johnson and Skoronski off the board as the first 2 tackles. And that's kind of where I think the value is at Wright. I think if Wright's there at 18, I think you've got better value taking him than taking the equivalent defensive lineman, if presuming that we've not taken Carter at 6. So that was kind of like my rationale.
Right.
Incidentally, like I'd be really tempted to take Bijan at 18, but I don't think Bijan will be there at 18.
I think it's interesting that every one of us took a corner, if you call Brian Branch a corner, but as in everyone else took a proper corner as well. Because obviously there was a lot of chat. We invested a lot around the secondary in the last month, but all of us took one. And I think probably because we're all relatively aligned that, yes, we've invested in that secondary. But I genuinely, and I'm still just about an Okudah believer, but I think there's definitely a world next year where you walk away saying Cam Sutton is a solid outside corner, but we have nothing else. Because Mosley's left, either because he performed well and had to go because he got paid or struggled. Okudah didn't take the step that we were hoping for. And so it's one of the things on in terms of having more dart throws. I would have loved to have gone and get a mid-round corner as well, just to throw something in. But I think it's interesting we had 3 picks of Witherspoon, all in the top 8.
I mean, the thing is, we've got Jerry Jacobs at the moment as a safety net, but even he needs to get paid at the end of this season, and with how well he's done as a starter, like, even in relief, he's been a okay NFL player, which is, much better than his draft position. He should expect to get paid something above $1 million a year, which he's not getting right now. Maybe 3 or 4. So, you got to stomach that even to get someone at his level. So we could really be struggling for corners. And with how Holmes deals with the draft, I just think it's going to be his number one need.
I think the key thing, like there's 6 of us, and between us, we've picked 4 names in the first round. I'd be happy with any of those 4. Like, I'd genuinely be delighted with any of those 4 options that we've got. So I kind of think 6 isn't a bad pick if it works out that we can get one of those 4.
Yeah. All right. Let's move it on to the second round now. And Ant, we are starting with you again. You are on the clock.
So pick 48. I don't know whether he falls this far. I kind of hope he does. If not, I'd trade up for him. But I'm solving my defensive tackle problem. I'm taking Keanu Benton from Wisconsin. I've talked about him at length, both on this show and the college podcast. Keanu Benton is exactly what this team needs on the defensive line. It's arguably the best run-stuffing defensive tackle in this draft. I think his tape would agree with me there. We need someone on that defensive line to come in and be able to help us deal against the run. It's been a problem for us for too long, but like Kaleem, Keanu has surprising pass rushing upside as well. He collected 6 sacks last year, 1 in each of his last 4 games. It was an asset of his game that was notably improved from start to end of season. So you've got 2 guys on the interior who are really going to be good against the run. Both command double teams, and if you leave them one-on-one, they're going to start getting pressure on the quarterback. But at the same time, you will also have a big safety net against the run here. I really like this guy. I think I had him as DT2 in this thing after Carter. I don't think people are as high on me, which is why I think he might fall a little bit. But yeah, Benton solves all our needs. We don't need a pass rushing 3-tech. We need a guy who can stuff the run first and rush the pass a second. And this is a guy who'll go out and do it for you. So yeah, this would be a no-brainer. And I'd be running to the podium if he's still there at 48.
Ryan.
I struggle with second round. I didn't know which way to put round these 2 players. So maybe a bit of reach first. I've gone with Dan Henley because I want a linebacker. And he's the best coverage linebacker in the draft. And his interceptions, his ball skills show that from his time at Washington State. And his knowledge of the other side of the ball, like I say, gives him an advantage. And I feel like the linebacker room needs work because behind Rodrigo and Anzalone, it's absolute garbage fire. So, yeah, I want to address it. I don't think the team will do this because for some reason, just no one thinks we respect linebacker or interested in it. I hope that's not the case.
All right, I am up next, and I'm looking at our O-line depth. I do think that, like Steve, you kind of need to invest higher in this draft than perhaps you would like, given how much we're paying to the O-line. The depth just isn't there right now. And so I'm going to take what I consider to be the best tackle on the board at the time. Interior, I think we can find later on or in free agency after the draft. So I've gone for Matthew Bergeron. Career right tackle guy before moving over to the left in 2020, so he's got experience of both spots. He's a smooth guy. He can pull really nicely, which I think is going to, fit in with our gap scheme pretty well. So, if Saul goes down, not saying we won't miss a beat, but he'll be able to do some of the stuff that Saul will be able to do. He's not the finished product by any means. He needs some polishing, but he's not coming in as a starter day one, and that's fine. But 6'5", 320, 33 3/4 arms. He's got the measurables that you need. Not the most explosive guy in the world. 8'7" broad is not exactly jumping off the page, but I think he's going to be a guy who does very well in the NFL. Steve.
Okay, so I said I wanted to take Carter if he was there at 6, because I think the interior of our defensive line is like one of our biggest issues. And with this pick, I was particularly thinking of that Carolina game when the middle of our backfield was just absolutely riddled, and it was just an absolute fucking disaster. And it really showed up kind of our weakness. So with this pick, I'm going for Mazi Smith of Michigan. He's absolutely a run stuffer, and he plays nose, so he gives us the opportunity to kick Aleem out to 3-tech if we need to give us a bit of flexibility. I think we need an absolute commanding presence. I'd really like Levi to come back, but I'm just not sure that he's going to, and I think we need this pick to kind of cover all bases. And I think Mazi Smith would be absolute quality in the middle of our D-line.
Tom.
Yeah, so I guess similar theme in terms of interior defensive line being this pick, which has obviously come up a few times. Part of my rationale, so I love Keanu Benton. I actually accidentally saw that Matt had already included him in there, so I decided to go in a different direction, but I love Keanu Benton as a player. Adi Adebore is the guy that I have gone for here. And the reason being, his testing is out of this world. And when I think about what we want to do as a defense, I think that explosion is super important in what the Lions look for their scheme, getting upfield, disrupting. And also he's raw. And we have John Kaminsky, who's going to be ahead of him for now. He has some flexibility to play the 3-tech. He can obviously play more like the 4-eye or 5-tech as well. So he's got a bit of positional flexibility. And I'm willing to take a gamble on him and some of the flashes you see, especially against top-tier competition, like when he played Ohio State. I'm willing to bet on some of the upside there. So, yeah.
And Ash finishing us off at 48.
Surprise, surprise. I agree with Ryan that we need a coverage backer. And of course, I've gone for my linebacker one in this class, Diane Henley out of Wazoo, because he just brings something to that linebacker room that we just don't have right now.
And then at 55?
So also someone else that's already been brought up, pod favourite defensive tackle Keanu Benton out of Wisconsin. And just listen to Andrew said he's highlighted him so much during the season, and I completely agree. He is something that we need. I do still argue we do need a pass rushing 3-tech, but the combination of value and need came together perfectly for me to land Benton at this point.
Tom?
Benton's so good. I wonder if he goes higher even, but maybe he's just a media darling. I don't know. Name that you probably haven't seen mocked to the Lions at this stage, but we're going back to the defensive line. For context, we're obviously going to have a great offense. I think we build around the defensive line, and I'm over-investing there for a reason. And then making sure I have smart guys on the back end like a Brian Branch to hold everything together. I've gone for BJ Ojulari here, LSU edge. I don't understand why he's not getting talked about more. Not that he's a potential first rounder even necessarily, but I just see this whole offseason, I've heard nothing about him during the draft process. And I just really liked him as a player. Yes, he probably clashes a little bit with James Houston, but I think he's a slightly different player as well. I think he's a slightly more traditional edge. Again, when I'm thinking of building this defensive line, I'm thinking of building a basketball team in terms of lots of players who you can kind of have a bit of versatility and you can use in different ways. Ojulari, obviously his brother already plays in the league. He's bendy, he's freaky, he gets after the quarterback. Yes, I'd like to see a little bit more in the run game, but I just think he's going to be a better player than his draft position. So, yes.
Steve.
So I've decided to address another need. Obviously, since Hockenson got traded to the Vikings, our tight end room has been a little experimental, should we say? And I think that it's a really deep class. There's 5 or 6 pretty solid tight end options that I think are going to be there the back of day 1, round about day 2. And I think that that's going to mean that one of the players that is going to still be there is going to be really, really good at value at that position. So I've gone for Iowa's Sam Laporta. I think on most boards he's around about tight end 4 or tight end 5. I mean, I'm not impressed with some of that, like Dalton Kincaid. I wouldn't want him. I think Darnell Washington is a bit of a unicorn, but I think Laporta is a really solid pick that will give us options. Good at blocking, but he's pretty quick as well. So I think that really fills the need and helps the offense a bit as well.
I'm also doubling down on defensive line, but this time going to the interior, filling a big need. He's been mentioned twice already. Enough said. Keanu Benton, Wisconsin. Ryan.
I'm going with defensive end. Now, if you like Tyree Wilson, who's 6'6" and has a subpar 14 sacks in the last 2 series, well, Isaiah Foskey from Northwestern, 6'5", he's just as rangy, and he has 22 sacks in the last 2 seasons combined. He's an absolute freak off the edge. He can play against the run, very solid, got a relentless motor, and honestly, he's not getting enough love, whereas Tyree is getting everyone jizzing all over him. I'm sick of it. The slander, I'm not here for it. And you can get him in round 2. There's no reason you can't love this carbon copy just as much.
Ryan doing his best to get us demonetized. I love it. Oh, man. And 55, finish us off.
Well, I actually kind of feel really bad here because I'm the Diane Henley stan, but I am like the 3rd guy to pick him, like later than 2 others. So I kind of feel really bad here. But yeah, I think I love Diane Henley, the linebacker for Washington State. I just, fell in love with him a little while ago. And again, his coverage skills as a linebacker are immense. The ability to track running backs, the ability to track tight ends. Like I said, he used to be a wide receiver in his prior days, so he's got exclusive knowledge about routes, about timings, about looks, all this. And yes, he is a little bit of a tweener at this moment in time, but he has everything he needs to thrive at linebacker at the next level. And who knows, with Rodrigo, and if Barnes keeps improving, you don't need to throw him in right away, but he's something we don't have on this team. And our linebacking unit needs upgrading with a guy like this, especially, with how we've suffered against tight ends and how we've suffered against running backs as receivers in this division. And it's not going to get any easier. This is the guy you want. He just is insane with his speed, the play recognition, everything you want from a linebacker he has, and it just needs fine-tuning. So he's absolutely the guy. I think I'm a lot high on him than a lot of others are, hence why I think he's got more chance of slipping to 55 than Keanu. So that's why I did it in this order. But, if we came away with this in round 2, I'd be absolutely delighted. Diane could be one of the best players in this draft when he hits his ceiling, if he does.
Guys in the chat, let us know how you think we're doing so far. Whose mock do you like the most? What's a surprising pick? Give us all your chat and we'll feed back to you in just a moment. Guys, what do you reckon about round 2? Who's done well?
Ant knows I'm like one of the board members of the Laporta fan club. This is a reach, unfortunately. He'll be there at 81. I think the second round for me is a little bit too rich. Like I say, even though I love him, I just think that's a little bit too high. But I love the player. I do like the pick. And I agree where it's doubling down. I've seen a lot of Marzi Smith going to the Lions, so I'd be pretty happy with Steve's. I am definitely on board with. I'd like to improve on Brock Wright, and I just keep seeing people saying on Twitter like, "No, our tight end room's fine." It's bloody well not. The best teams in the NFL right now have a standout tight end, and whether we learn to use them or not, if we draft a good tight end, that puts the onus on the coaching staff to actually use them better. And it's never going to be the player's fault here. I always believe that if we ruin a tight end, it will be coaching. It will be how they're schemed.
I knew that if I was going to see Adatom Yi was named today, I was 99.9% certain it was going to be Tom that picked him, because I know exactly the sort of player that Tom likes when it comes to the traits and the measurables. And I wondered if he was going to do it, and he did.
And the thing is, I knew that you'd be all over it as well. So I actually, for the listeners' sake, when we talked about doing this mock in our kind of offline chat, I joked about taking Luke Musgrave at 6. Addy was my last player in, and I actually had Musgrave in here because I joked about him and then watched a bit of him and was like, oh, I actually really quite like him as a player. So I'm not sure he's going to be there at 48, to be honest, but the tight ends seem to slip every year. So there's a good chance he is, good chances he isn't. I just decided to go with Adebore, but yeah, I mean, it's a gamble, right? It's definitely not a safe pick, but I think there's enough flashes in there to get you excited. Keanu Benton, sorry, I also said pre-show about spoilers and then did it myself. I thought you'd already made the pick, but Benton looks so good. I almost wonder what are we missing? What are the media missing, etc.? Because he's so buzzy, and yet you never seem to see him talked about as a first rounder. So I don't know. I think he's such a good player on film. He ticked the athletic testing box more than I thought he was going to. Yeah, I'd love Benton as a pick, and I'd also love, for the record, Henley. I think is such a good player. I just didn't want to take a linebacker here necessarily, but I think he's fantastic.
I think the thing with Benton is he's not a shiny toy. If you look at Brian Brzee, what he could be, and everyone says, oh, yeah, you could get this all-conquering D tackle there. Even with Mazzy Smith, who is an awful pass rusher, but everyone's like, he's so athletically given, and these guys are all like shiny toys, whereas Keanu Benton is like, you know, he's the miner. He's like the gritty, deep down dirty guy who doesn't do anything that makes him look like a shiny toy on the outside. He's just going to be, you know, a great player for you, but it's not flashy. It's not uber athletic. And I think that's why he doesn't get talked about. And then when you start adding in those hybrid edge types, Tyree Wilson, Adebare, all these guys who are also, oh, look at these guys and all they can do. And then I think that's why Benton's unappreciated. And hopefully the draft will show that. If he drops down to us at 2, that's again the league doing themselves a disservice because they're making us so good.
It's a similar story with BJ Ojulari as well. The reason he's fallen is because he's a bit undersized and he hasn't done that much athletic testing. I remember in week 1 against Florida State, and he got like 2 sacks and 2 hurries against Jordan Travis. So like he played really well, but it's just the sort of he's fallen by the wayside a bit because everyone else has tested really well and has sort of met the RAS score that everyone looks at. I think BGO drives is about 4.9-ish. So he's sort of fallen by the wayside where everyone else sort of jumped in because of the athletic testing. But it's such a Brad Holmes kind of guy though, because that's what happened with Amon Ra. He didn't really test that well, but the tape showed he was good. And then Brad managed to get him, and it's turned out well. So it's 100% a Brad Holmes pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I saw something about Ojulari, because I don't think he ran a 40, right? And then there was a tweet around if you gave him either it was his brother's 40 or an expected 40, then his RAS score goes up to 8 point something. So yeah. I personally, I'm not worried about him from an athleticism standpoint. I think he's bendy. I think he's sudden. Yeah, there's enough there that I'm less worried about that side. But yeah, you're right. I mean, he hasn't had a perfect pre-draft process by any means. You rarely see him discussed by media types either. So it's just, for me, it's a miss. I just think he's a good player.
Yeah.
I do like that pick, I must admit.
I think after all the pre-pod tight end chat, I'm like amazed that I'm the only one that's taken a tight end in the first 4 picks. And can I just say that's very like off-brand for me picking a tight end, but I just kind of thought there was value and it was a great class and it is like a need. I think looking at all the rest of the mocks, I'm not sure that Will Anderson will be there at 6, but I think Matt, you've had a sneaky good draft there. I really like your other picks.
For the record, we do like me and Ryan. We do like Laporta. I just think you're going to find him. Yeah, I think you're going to find him a little because again, Laporta's one of these. He's not flashy or shy. Like guys like Musgrave. He's only played 13 games in college, but his size, his athletic ability, stuff like that. It's like, oh, look what you could have. When then you've got a really hard-working, gritty guy like Sam Laporta who will do everything for you and has been loyal to a shoddy team. It ticks every box you want, but he doesn't have the shiny measurables or anything like that. But he could be much better than them. I think he's definitely a Lions pick. Laporta.
I've seen a lot of mocks that have got like 2 or 3 tight ends in round 1. So I kind of think I just can't see Laporta if he's like tight end 4, and you get like Mayer, Kincaid, or maybe Washington go in the first round. I can't see Laporta drop into 81. That was just kind of like my rationale behind taking him at 55 because I did think about 81, but I just thought he's not going to be there.
But I think you got loads of guys in though, because I'm pretty sure I'm seeing Tucker Kraft top 50 now, who's leapfrogged him. So you kind of, I don't think he is. He might be skill wise, but I think in terms of national perception, he could be down at like 7 or something like that, which is totally unjustified. But I think that's why he probably falls if he does. Depends whether teams take all these tight ends right at the top. Because I think a lot will, but who knows?
It feels like every year they do seem to be high in media mocks and then fall.
Yeah.
So you never know. Laporte, and right, let's caveat this up front. I'm not saying he's this player, but your point around kind of gritty, not that flashy Iowa tight end who ran a 4.5, George Kittle. And George Kittle, no one liked coming out. I think he was a 5th rounder, right? But as in, I remember reading some of the pre-draft stuff with him, and everyone was like, he's just a linear athlete. He offers nothing but a bit of blocking. Now, Laporta, I think, is more complete than maybe Kittle showed at Iowa, but it's a similar story. I mean, yes, he's not the most kind of exciting toy, so to speak, but he still runs a 4.5, and he's come out of a pro-style offense at Iowa. He definitely can move people in the run game and block. So, yeah, I like Laporta a lot. I think the tight ends are going to get a bit weird. There's a lot of good ones, and I think good ones are going to fall. Guys might go higher than you think. It's going to be a bit weird.
And he was their literal number 1 wide receiver as well. He was literally the best receiver they had, and he still got yardage. And they were still doubling him up and stuff like that. So that's sneaky receiving ability that he has as well, to still be the only receiver who's competent on that team and still perform really well. Says a lot. Like Mitchell at Virginia Tech. It's an underrated skill of theirs.
The chat.
I was going to say about the chat as well, because I've seen it, and it's my jumping in bit. I'm seeing people saying about not a tight end high, take it late and develop depth. Spoilers for everyone, but I am currently working on an article looking at later round tight ends for this reason, because for me, the late day 3 is such a sweet spot for the kind of tight ends we like. You've got Durham Payne out of Purdue. You've got Davis Allen out of Clemson. You've got this like Luke Schoonmaker from Michigan might be there day 3. You've got this like cluster of tight ends who just, while they might not be the big flashy ones like Kincaid, Musgrave, all this that can do stuff in the receiving game, they might be just a slight upgrades on your Brock Wright, on your St. Zylstra, to just keep recycling the tight end room, still have guys there that can do what we want, can catch a few passes in the red zone, but the first and foremost are good blockers, and that's what we're looking for. Day 3 is such a sweet spot for that I'm not really high on taking a tight end on day 1 or 2.
Just looking at the chat, everyone seems to be really split. The only person who seems to get a really divisive grade is Tom, whether you like the Anthony Richardson pick or not, and then everyone else seems to have like a number 1 vote from someone in there. So it's quite interesting to see that I think that must mean that we're all doing either okay or badly, depending on your point of view.
And I'm either going to the Super Bowl or getting fired. So you guys have job security. I definitely don't.
All right, moving on with round 3 and pick 81, and you're starting us off again.
So just quickly before we do this, Matt, with the whole snake thing, I have 2/4, so, and obviously the snake will go to 5 if we did it that way. So I don't know how you want to do that. You want to reverse the snake or
No. Well, you keep 3 as it is, and then I'll start 5 at the other end.
Yeah.
All right, no worries. Okay. So I've had 4 defensive picks to start my draft. I'm feeling pretty comfortable with where I'm at now. Now I'm going to switch things to the offensive side of the ball, and I'm actually looking at running back here because I really like the running back class, and plus I've got my extra picks now. Running back wasn't here before, but now I've got my extra picks. It is, and I'm going to take my favorite guy who I've had all the year in this role. I'm taking Israel Abanikanda from Pittsburgh. He is going to be in my mock draft, and he's going to be in there because people go, well, look, we've got Montgomery, we've got Swift now, but we've got Swift one more year. Israel is a power back, a very damn good one. Ash knows, plays in the conference at Florida State. We had a 1,500 yard season this year, and the way the Lions play, I feel like we like our smash mouth backs, the ones who are going to go in, who can take a lot of contact, who can grind out the extra yards, tough, gritty. And for me, he's the epitome of this, what you're getting out this draft. I mean, he had a few years in rotation, so you don't have the mileage on there. So injury-wise, he's been really good going forward. I really love him to come and sit as running back 3, get some reps, get some time under his belt. And then when Swift goes next year, we've got Monty, we've got Israel, we've got a 1-2 power punch, which we can really base our run game on and lean on. And I know people say there's loads of running backs in that this year, and there is. And to be honest, in my original one, I took one later, but now that I've got a couple more, I think we have the luxury of being able to go up and afford a better guy at the next level. Like I say, maybe year 1, he's not going to do too much. Year 2, he's going to be an absolute star. So Israel Abanikanda from Pittsburgh, he's my guy at running back. I start shaping my offense now.
And Ryan.
81, I've gone with one of my favourite players. Like, I love this guy, and PFF now loves him too because he's graded in the top 70 picks. I've got Riley Moss, the cornerback from Iowa. Over 2,000 career snaps, long haul, including defense and special teams. A coverage grade of 74.0 across all 4 seasons. Lots of interceptions, multiple touchdowns when he gets the ball in his hand. At the Senior Bowl, he measured in at just under 6'1", roughly 190 pounds, has great speed, good athleticism, fantastic ball-to-hand movements, and was the stalwart of an Iowa defense that has been a juggernaut for the last few years. Like I say, a very lopsided team, but I've loved him for the last 2 years, and I feel like now he's getting the appreciation there, and I feel like he could be a really sneaky pick of upside, very experienced guy.
Next is me at 81, and I am turning my attention back to the offense, and it's been pointed out actually quite a bit in the chat that there's some surprise at how little investment we're doing there, with a lot of free agency going into the defense and an offense which perhaps overperforms, that perhaps lacks on a little bit of depth, that needs a bit of reupholstery or some depth pieces to kind of develop to make sure that it's as good as it can be for 2023. Because let's face it, if we're going to win games next year, that's got to be firing on all cylinders. And I look at the X position and think, we're really lacking here. So I've gone for a guy who fits the profile and maybe, needs a little bit better hands, but someone who's physical, can run the routes, speedy, very, very productive player. I've gone for A.T. Perry. Steve.
Yeah, so I thought long and hard about this pick because I definitely think we have got a need as an ex wide receiver. And I looked at like Cedric Tillman and I looked at A.T. Perry. And again, I was like worried that they were going to be there at 81. And then I thought, right, come on, this is a defense draft. So I think this is where you kind of get value for linebacker. So I've gone for DeMarvion Overshone, the linebacker from Texas. He started out as a safety, transitioned to linebacker. He's 6'3", he's 230 pounds, good speed, 4'5". And whenever you look at a draft profile, violent tackler is one of the kind of key buzzwords. And it just sounds to me like a Lions and a Campbell pick.
Tom.
We're going back to the defensive line. So this is our third pick in a row there. I'm taking Zach Pickens outside South Carolina. So another flashy player, I think it's fair to say. And let's be honest, I'd love to hit on all of these guys, but the reality is we might not. So yes, I'm going for another flashy style player, a guy who is, again, probably more of a 3-tech, but I do think has some flexibility. I actually think he plays bigger than his size. He's listed, I think, at 291. I could see him even playing some 1-tech at a stretch as well. PFF doesn't grade him out as a particularly good run defender, but I actually saw flashes, which makes me think he's going to be better. And again, with these guys, I'm betting that we don't need to throw them into the fire straight away. We have a lot of short-term deals on the interior D-line, but guys who can take up some of these reps while we get these rookies up to speed. And he's an X 5-star player. In general, I like to bet on 5-star guys, especially if they have. So yes, they have the traits, but they need to have the character. He's one that I'd want to, like, we will never get this information. I'd want to understand the interviews and how he's talked about. But if the character checks out, he was a team captain. So I think that's a positive in that regard. He does flash. He's got kind of all the tools you'd want as a defensive tackle, and he does have that previous pedigree. So I think, again, the upside is there. You can see that there's quite a lot of upside players here, but that's because I think we can afford to swing. We've obviously built a much better roster than we previously had over the last few years, and I'm willing to take chances on some of these guys.
And Ash.
Is there any surprise that I'm taking this guy? Safety / nickelback, Jamie Robinson out of Florida State. Just insult what's been said about Brian Branch earlier. Perhaps not as smooth in coverage, but damn, can this boy hit? He's undersized. He's about 5'11", 190, but this man can hit like a missile. Play him up near the line of scrimmage. You can blitz him. He can take slot receivers in coverage. Perhaps not against tight ends because of the size, but this man is a do-it-all safety. He can even play special teams for you. So if you, as I said in my profile on him a couple of weeks ago, this is a guy who can do a punt return and then literally, kick return and then literally come in on defense and cover a slot corner on slot receiver on the next rep. He's my favorite player in this class for obvious reasons, but it will just be such a Dan Campbell pick. I remember and Eric Slitt saying in multiple podcasts that in the combine interviews, there's a couple of players supposedly Dan Campbell highlighted as Lions players. Jamie is definitely one of them. He just fits us so well.
All right, we're about halfway through, fellas. Round 3, what do we reckon? Just one pick to look at this time.
You can tell by my reaction. I've loved this round for us. Zach Pickens, I did for our DT prospects review, and I completely agree, Tom. He's underrated as a run defender, considering his size and that. I wouldn't say he's flashed it. I actually think he's quite steady. He's such a safe pick for me that he can do everything. He can run, defend, and he can pass rush, at least from what I've seen. So he's a nice, steady, consistent presence behind Aleem at the 3 for me, personally. And then obviously I love Israel Abakanda. I was probably second on the train on this pod, behind Ant because of the ACC bias. But he can be the home run presence that Swift's supposed to be, but with a bit more power. So while Monty's sort of like a steady, consistent guy, Israel can hit that sort of long speed touchdown that perhaps Monty can't.
Weirdly enough,
he could be taken later.
Oh, sorry. Like I say, he's a freaky athlete. He's kind of boom or bust, but whether you put him back at safety, which you could do, or play him at linebacker, the coverage skills are there. And yeah, he's got the violence and the aggression. Just needs to probably clean it up and be a little bit tidier. Might get you some penalties, but I feel like it could be a pretty quick impact player. If he did come out last year, I reckon he'd have probably gone just as high as well. Been pretty consistent for the last 2 years.
It was funny, before I did my trade like 2 minutes before the show, I actually also had A.T. Perry in my slot here for wide receiver that Matt picked him there. But there is no pick if we draft Riley Moss, I will stand so hard for Ryan here. It has been such a journey with Riley Moss and him. I'll just be absolutely delighted. The look on his face, you will see Ryan smile. It's not something you see very often, but you will see the biggest grin break out on his face. I will be delighted if the Lions did get him just for that.
Look at him trying to hold back that smile now.
He
Like, I'm not
is.
gonna
Look,
just because
there
you
we
said it, I ain't
go.
gonna say.
I saw a little flicker when he mentioned it. He goes, "I love this guy. I knew he was coming. I knew
The
exactly
white,
who was
the white
coming."
cornerback in there. I'm just rooting for the guy. He resonates with me.
Yeah, I love this round in general in terms of the guys taken. A.T. Perry, again, it was him and Benson were the ones I saw in Matt's and didn't want to repeat, but he's definitely in the mix for me. I actually saw Brett Coleman did a mock draft and he had him going to us in the second round. And it wouldn't surprise me if Perry, I think the value is more third, but it wouldn't surprise me if someone went and got him before 81 as well, just because there aren't that many receivers with his skills in the draft this year.
Yeah, I think probably my favourite pick is Abanikanda of all of them, just because he's such a fun player to watch, and just because I'm not a Swift believer anymore. I'm kind of just out on him now. Like, I don't know what you guys think on this, but there's been a lot of podcasts saying it's fine, we'll take a running back. Swift can be the number 3. He'll get some reps. He'll have 2 or 3 good games a year, and that will be fine for that sort of position. But in order for him to actually be productive for 3 games a year, I kind of feel like you've got to give him 17 to give him the chance to actually be productive. So I don't know if Swift's a guy for this year at all. Like, I know that we probably can't trade him away, and he's too big of a talent to just chuck, but I don't know how Swift gets back on the team. And I know that might seem like a massive overreaction, but Abanikanda for me is just someone who's just going to take Swift's role.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And if not, then you can you can train him, you can prepare him. There'll be roles he plays. He plays on special teams. He does what you need him to. So, and I figure if you get some extra day to 3 picks, then you can invest a bit higher in running back. But I just think it fits that style. So,
I mean, I think we are forgetting. I mean, Swift, when he's good, is very, very good. Like, he can be absolutely electric. The problem is he doesn't stay on the field long enough. So if he can improve his durability, then like I'm kind of in on Swift, and it'd be interesting to see like the kind of chemistry with David Montgomery, because I'm not sure that Jamal Williams is going to like the best fit with them both in the backfield. I was just going to ask you, Ant, is that where the value is on Abanikanda? Like, do we need to take him at 81? Because like I don't really want to take a running back in the first 3 rounds if I can help it.
the thing is, we've got a big ass gap till the next pick, and he won't be there then. So, no. I know what you mean, but I think we've got to prepare for Swift's departure next year. I think even if he plays well, I don't think we're going to pay him the sort of money that he might want because of the injury history. And then if he doesn't play well, he's gone anyhow. So I think you've got to reload at the position as well. You've got to have a good 2 in there. And so I think you may have to. And people will say there's loads of good running backs in here this year. It's just, with me, it's always personal preference, for what I feel fits us best. There could be someone else, but I would like to pick a little higher on one.
And I think that gap between 81 and 152 is exactly why I'd be delighted if we did manage to trade back and get a 4. Obviously, 2/4 is great, but just something in between that gap. There are so many guys that I would have loved to take at 152, and I was just like, they're not going to be there. Or I don't think in good faith I could say that there's like even a 30-40% chance that some of these guys would be there. And I think, Ant, you mentioned it earlier, for me it is a bit of a sweet spot in the draft, is that kind of 3rd to 4th round area. And actually, if I look at the second round, I like our second rounds, and I've talked about Benson and things. That's the kind of area where I don't really necessarily need 2 picks there. I would rather probably pull one of those back and get an extra couple of later picks personally.
All right, now at the midpoint of the show. And if you guys can chuck us a like on the YouTube, that would be much appreciated from you guys. And if you've got any questions or comments, please do get that super chat in there. That'd be much appreciated. All right, time to get on with round 4. And back to back. Let's go.
Yeah, so these are my 2 extra picks in here. I love the sweet spot region, like Tom says in here. There's loads of guys I want to pick. So first up at 110, I think it is. I'm going back to the defensive line because I think we need a bit some more long-term prospects there. And I've gone with a highly underrated prospect out the SEC here. This is Isaiah McGuire, the edge out of Missouri. He's 6'4", 275 pounds. He's had a sneaky good career on a rubbish Missouri team, and he's got a lot of production. I'm going back to, I was a big stand for Kingsley Enagbare last year out of South Carolina, and no one was talking about him. This is the guy this year, and you saw Kingsley grow into his role with the Packers this year, and they got him as something stupid like 220, which they never should have. But as for Isaiah, the last 2 years, he's had 30 starts, 28 tackles for loss, 14.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles. He averages a 75 grade against the run. He's had 72 overall quarterback pressures, 65 run stuffs there. Only 2 penalties in his entire career. This is a very disciplined young man when it comes to the way that he plays football. He's got the ideal size and the length that you want for the NFL. His footwork off the snap is terrific. He's sort of new at the position here. He's only really played it the last 2 seasons. So he is still raw when it comes to the pass rush arsenal and bits like that. But he's very clever. He's very good at finding the ball, which is why his run grades are so good. He always seems to be able to locate where the ball carrier is going, sort of predict his movements there. And you can sort of play him at edge. You can play him in an outside linebacker role if you want to. But I think give him a year, develop him with all these great guys we've got here. Because don't forget, Charles and Romeo might be gone next year. So we do have to sort of look for, but you kind of want them guys to get the starter snaps this year, get a lot of the carry whilst you've got a guy backing them up and you traded him for the future. And I think this is the guy because he's going to go so far under the radar, no one's going to notice him. And I think it's really a crime that no one's really talking about him more. So 110, I pick Isaiah McGuire from Missouri to reinforce our DNs in the long run there. And then at 113, probably the most obvious pick that anyone who knows me would guess in my draft. I'm going on to the offense. I'm going wide receiver. I'm taking Buka Nasua from BYU because he is the outside threat that we need. He also comes from a system where emphasis is on run blocking, pulling your weight, everything that Dan Campbell asks for in a receiver. You look with Amon-Ra, even with J-Mo, who is not beyond going in, slamming a hit on somebody. It comes from a system that produces the type of receivers that the Lions will want. And as an outside threat, I think he's terrific. The contested catch ability, the size, everything you need with him. He will be the outside guy going forward. Maybe not right away, but in due course, he will do. I'm going to sort my guy there. So I think he's an absolute perfect fit for us and everything we need. I think he's going to be an outside version of what Amon-Ra is, and you're picking him roughly the same place you've got Amon-Ra as well. So my round 4 is Isaiah McGuire, the edge from Mizzou, and Puka Nasua, the wide receiver from BYU. 2 development guys, but I think they're going to fit us to a T.
We've been stopping every round, so we've only got Ant's picks to tear into. So is it bad or just awful?
Nasua makes tons of sense. X-Seal, like you say, wins on the outside. Fine by me.
He has a good content potential with the all the pie puns we can make with his name.
He'd definitely be in the Pride of Detroit name bracket and would be in the mix. McGuire, I know he doesn't weigh as much, but McGuire is almost a bit of a Josh Pascal light. Has a bit of flexibility, a positional flexibility, and does a lot of the similar things. He's probably not quite as stout, but a similar kind of more of a linear guy, I would say. Like you're not going to expect him to necessarily show loads of bend around the edge, but just a good player.
Michael Lucci's in the chat and just said, I caught Puka Nasua one night when I drank too much a few years ago, which I love. Right, let's get on with round 5, and we're going to start in reversal this time with Ashley Soden.
on a similar vein to good old Puka, but I've gone for another one of Ant's sort of sleeper ex receivers with Andre Yoshavas, the wide receiver out of Princeton. Quite similar in terms of build and style and that. Perhaps a bit more of a development because obviously he's coming from Princeton, which is from what I remember, it's like a D2 school, so he probably needs a bit more refinement. But there is our potential future X that can go alongside Amon Ra and JMO and gives us a good young wide receiver core to head into the future with.
Tom.
So also wide receiver, I couldn't find an X that I was necessarily happy with here. A guy that I think will fall this far, and to me it is a fall because of some injury challenges, is Michael Wilson. And for me, he's just a way better player than a pick in the 150s would be. I came across him really having not known much about him until I watched Christian Gonzalez for the first look video we did. Wilson just tore him to pieces. And I was expecting, I didn't know what kind of measurables he was going to have when you watch on film, when you watch on tape, because he's so sudden, but he weighs kind of 215, 220. He's a big guy. And if he can stay healthy, I think he can separate at the NFL level. I think he's got strong hands. I think he can win at the NFL level. And in terms of the Lions, he is, in my opinion, and I won't say I've watched 50 of these guys, but one of, if not the best run blocker in the draft at the receiver position. So I think he fits exactly what the Lions want to do. He's kind of like in a bit more of the Quintez Cephus mold, but just a much, much better player. And I think especially with someone like Goff and also potentially with someone like Anthony Richardson, but I want guys that are going to get open. And I think he's going to get open at the NFL level.
Steve.
So I've gone not a million miles away from Tom. So I've gone Elijah Higgins, wide receiver from Stanford. And again, like I was hoping to get A.T. Perry or Cedric Tillman. I didn't think I'd get them at 81. So I've dropped down around and I've taken Higgins at 152. So Higgins is 6'3". He's got that run after the catch upside, size and speed. And I think he's definitely like a developmental wide receiver prospect. I'm just interested what you think, Tom, in terms of whether you'd like compare the two of them when you were like choosing this pick.
Higgins, more of an exciting, flashy kind of height, weight, speed X type. But Wilson is less exciting, definitely. I just think he's a better player and probably doesn't have the upside that Higgins has.
I kind of felt that we need an X, so that's kind of why I went with Higgins. But
Higgins he's going to be a bit more boom bust, but he's got X potential, right? Wilson probably doesn't, and he's unlikely to ever become a wide receiver one. But I think, especially in the 5th round, there's a place for a guy who's just a really solid wide receiver 2-3, and for me would be an upgrade on someone like Josh Reynolds, if not year 1, year 2 and beyond.
Right, I am up next. Bear with me a sec. And I am taking a running back in this position. This is where I think the running back value gets really enticing, because I think there's a few guys in this sort of early to mid day 3 territory that I still think are really, really appealing. Considered Chris Rodriguez here, but ultimately didn't go in that direction. I instead went for Keaton Mitchell out of East Carolina. Now, it's going to be an interesting pick because I think there's a lot of similarities between DeAndre Swift and him. The vision sometimes isn't fantastic, but in space he's terrific, can run routes as a receiver, has home run speed, really shifty, one of the quickest backs in the class, 5'9", 184, not one of the best pass blockers. For me, this is kind of just a like-for-like replacement. You've got to hope that with some good blocking out there for the O-line, that he can be the guy to take the top of a defense from that position and hopefully do it a bit more consistently than Swift does. Ryan.
152. These are the first of my offensive picks. I've gone for a guard, Jackson Kirkland, the 6'7" behemoth from Washington. Has experience playing on the left and the right. He has got a ridiculous bottom half. He is so hard to move. In the run game, he is a mauler. The only problem is his leverage because he's so big, guys can get underneath him. So in pass blocking, does need a little bit of work. But as a long-term project, he has a lot of experience playing for the Huskies, who run a very good pro-style offense, and he could be a future guard. Doesn't need to start straight away this year. Doesn't need to play at all. Like I say, it should be hopefully something you can plug and play next year. Either side, like I say, it depends on what happens. It gives us flexibility if we do want to pay Jonah or not, because he is used to playing on the left.
Anna.
152. Who did I go for? Right, yes. So I'm moving back onto the offense now, and I'm moving towards my offensive line for the next few picks. So I've made no bones about the fact that we need to start getting the guys of the future on there. We're going to be paying everybody soon. So I'm going to start taking my development guys for the future from now on, for the next couple of picks. The first guy I've got here, a guy who I've really grown to love over the last few months, and I've had a good chat with him, with people who know him quite well in the HBCU scene. I'm talking about Mark Evans the second. He is the offensive tackle from Arkansas Pine Bluff. He has been a 4-year starter there. No, it's second. I put third, but it's second. That was my thing. It is Mark Evans the second. So yeah, 4-year starter at Arkansas Pine Bluff down in the HBCUs. He is a monster, to put it lightly. 6'4", 300 pounds. Could maybe do with getting a little bit bigger going up to the next level. But in terms of a guy who you can develop and mold at the next level, I don't think you're going to find many guys better at this level. So he's played at left tackle his entire career. He might kick in inside at the next level, or you might get... I think he'd probably play versatile left tackle, left guard, wherever you really need him to. But this guy is relentless when it comes to his finish. Arkansas Pine Bluff, they love to run the ball. He is a guy who gets out his stance quick with a lot of power, drives guys back, just incessantly all the time. In pass protection, he is really good. It's not something they do as much, and it's something that he needs to grow on. But there's definitely traits there with him. He's got everything you need to develop as a good pass protector. And people will go, he plays in the HBCUs. The level of competition isn't there. But they played against, I think it was Oklahoma State earlier this year. They did get blown out, but he himself had an absolutely tremendous game. Their defensive line, I think the guy who had the least amount of starts on there had 30 starts. They were very highly seasoned defensive linemen who just won the Big 12 last season. And he gave them very little that day. I just see a guy who is relentless, who's got everything you need for the next level. And in a year or two, when you need that depth and you need someone to step up, he is going to be that guy. I really love him. The guys at the HBCU we talked to, they think he might go higher, but I think he'll go here. I don't know if the league will be as big on him just yet. So Mark Evans the second, Arkansas Pine Bluff. I'm going to start fixing my offensive line for the future.
All right, round 5 in the books, guys. What picks do we like here?
I like them all.
I like the receivers. I mean, Yoshivas he is the prototype wide receiver. If you were to design a wide receiver for the NFL, he is like the exact design you would create. With him, it's just whether he can step it up against better opposition, because obviously the Ivy League ain't the creme de la creme, but I think he can. He would have been in this mock at another place if I'd not gone with Puka. And Wilson's an underrated one as well. I think because Stanford have been so doggone awful these last few years, he's just gone way under the radar. So a couple of guys I would have absolutely no issues with us drafting going forward. Wilson's got the frame, and he's also gone up against some real good competition and made them look silly, as Tom said. So I don't know why he doesn't get more love in this draft, to be fair. If he's there at 152, then that could be a steal.
Interesting observation from Det Fan Man in the chat, just saying no defense in the 5th round, it seems. Do you think that's a thing? Do you think that there's a bit of a sweet spot for offense at this sort of range? Obviously, we don't have a 4th round pick as it stands. Obviously, Ant changed that a little bit. But just is it defense higher and offensive depth lower, or is it just how it fell for you guys?
See, how I look at it is we have a lot of spots on defense, linebacker, safety, and college where there's not much young talent coming through. Outside of Rodrigo, outside of Kirby, there's a lot of guys here on 1-year deals, there's not much depth for the future. So I think you've got to invest your high picks in there for some kind of sustainability. Whereas on the offense, your offensive line should be good for another 2 or 3 years, so you can afford to wait a little later and get guys to develop instead. So you're fixing your defense now and you're fixing your offense long term. You can say the same with running back. You can maybe say it with tight end if you're a big James Mitchell believer, as I am. I think you can afford to wait a little bit on the offense.
Yeah,
Also,
and I think
just pick up more injuries on defense. We need genuine more reinforcements. If we pick up injuries, usually it's stingers on defense.
I mean, for me, our defense just, sucked so badly last year at points. Yeah, we had some moments, but for a lot of the time, it absolutely sucked still. And so for me, this draft was always about the defense. But then we've just focused so much on defense in free agency. Like without the free agency, after 6 picks, I'd have probably had 5 defense and 1 offense. But the fact that we have focused on in free agency is, I think I'm at like 4 and 6 or maybe 3 and 3 in terms of offense defense. So it's kind of down to Holmes and the fact he's given us the flexibility a lot of time to take the best player available.
I think a lot of us invested obviously on the defensive side early. It wouldn't surprise me if when we get to the draft, we actually see more offensive picks at the top, just because I think it's easy when we're doing mocks to focus more on defense, but there is a lot of defensive talent in this range. I just think we prioritized other areas. And so you still want to maybe pick up a running back or pick up a guard or something like that in this area, or a tight end potentially, which is why we're probably seeing more here.
Yeah, 75% of our round 1 picks are defense out of the 6 of us.
Yeah. All right, let's move it on to round 6. And Ant, you are starting us off for what seems to be the last round, and I said I was going to spring a 7th round surprise on me.
No, I've got no extra picks in there, so this is it. Carlton Woods just actually spoiled my pick because he's very rightly guessed it in the chat. Offensive guard Chandler Zavala from NC State. Now, again, anyone who listens to the college show that knows I'm a big NC State fan, and I didn't really consider him for a long time because I was maybe thinking about Osiris Torrance so much at the top of the draft for a while. But again, I just think we need guys to develop in the long term on our offensive line. I don't think we're in desperate need for any starters now, especially with Hal and Glasgow at right guard. So Zavala's another one I'm going to bring in at least for a year, get him trained up, maybe give him a few snaps here and there, get him ready. But, anyone who knows anything about the NC State offensive line, they are big, they are mean, they are nasty, and he's technically very sound as a player as well when it becomes to his pad space and when it becomes to showing rushes to his outside where he's on his strongest, his feet, his movement, his hands. It's all really good when it comes to the work he does. I mean, at this point in the draft, you are picking guys who still need a lot of development, but this NC State side's been good these last few years. They've protected Devin Leary pretty well. I really like Zavala, and I think you can play at both guard spots. You can sort of move him around a little bit, but he's just got this big wide-bodied frame. He moves so well. I feel like he'll fit our system quite well to a point. And I've seen his name mentioned a few times. I know we have had contact with him, so it wouldn't surprise me if he was going to be one of the guys on day 3, and maybe a little bit biased as an NC State fan, but I love Zavala, and I would love the pick here to back up Mark Evans and then Chandler Zavala, setting up our offensive line for the future.
Ryan.
6th round, so for me, these are total flyers. So I had 3 players in mind at 183, all receivers. I went with Justin Shorter, the SEC Florida wide receiver, 6'4", 215, 220 pounds. Decent, like say 3, 4, 500 yards a year season. Reading up on him, he does like he could basically be an end-line tight end if he gains a little bit of weight. So he's got flexibility to go out in the slot and play on the end of the line and do a bit of blocking. He's got experience in a good division, despite having some turmoil at quarterback. Like you say, he's been recycling guys like Kyle Trask and Andy Richardson. So he's not exactly had the most potent passing, but he's managed to do fairly well. I did consider Joseph Nagata from Clemson and Jadon Hazelwood from Arkansas as a project receiver that I'd like to stash away in the practice squad. But round 6 and 7, it's kind of like Bertie Bott's, all flavour beans. You either get puke or you get cherry. You really don't know what's going to happen. So I've just decided to go and stash a receiver away because I really don't feel like it's a need this season. I don't have to think right now.
I don't know why, but I didn't have you pegged for a Harry Potter guy. I'm just slightly surprised.
Seen them all, read the books. I'm just waiting for the price to come down on Harry Potter Legacy because I'm not paying £65. And I bought a digital PlayStation, so I can't get second-hand games like an idiot. When it comes down, I'll get it.
All right, my turn. And at this point, I'm really worrying about my backup quarterback situation. I don't see Teddy coming. I don't know why. I just don't think that's going to happen. And so the need here is pretty acute. And I think there's a lot of choice at quarterback at this position, but I've chosen to go for one of the guys I actually reviewed on the quarterback show that we did. So if you want an in-depth review on this guy, do go back and have a listen to that. But I'm going for Clayton Tune from Houston, 24 years old, redshirt senior. I think he could operate the Goff offense at a reasonable level. I'm not saying that he won't miss a beat, but he's an accurate short-range passer. Actually has a little bit more of a deep ball than Goff does. Actually has a little bit more with his legs than Goff does. Gets through his progressions. Timing sometimes can be a bit off and can make some ill-advised throws, which is why he goes in the 6th. But, I mean, the guy is an accurate short-range passer. That's what Goff is. So, you know, I think that he could come in and do a job for us. Steve?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same wavelength as you, but I've gone for Aidan O'Connell from Purdue. Tough, gritty, competitive guy. I think very much in the Lions mold, and he's someone that is built for a scheme where you get rid of the ball really quickly. So for me, I think O'Connell is definitely has got that backup ability and also the ability to kind of improve as well. So yeah, I think we're both on the same wavelength there. And I think a Prison Mike just predicted my pick on the chat about a minute ago.
Tom?
Yeah, so filling kind of holes that I wish we could. Basically, I want more picks in this draft. And I think you smashed it in terms of getting that. But one hole which I think we do need to add to is offensive line depth. I'm taking a guy who isn't likely going to play much / at all this year, and that's guard Andrew Voorhees out of USC. So for those who didn't know, he tore his ACL at the combine, which isn't ideal, but has snaps all across the line. So I don't think he's a good enough athlete to play tackle, but again, in a pinch, you potentially could put him there, but can play left guard, right guard. Super, super powerful, strong guy. I mean, he tore his ACL and the next day just turned up and did the bench press anyway and had the highest number of the combine at 38 reps. So that doesn't tell me you're going to go out and kind of put the work in. I think the Lions would love that. So yeah, Voorhees for me.
And Ash?
On a similar vein, and it's someone that we've had a top 30 visit with, the tackle / guard, Jordan McFadden out of Clemson. So he's played left tackle, right tackle, and right guard for Clemson, I believe. And he's that sort of position versatile 6 lineman, potential backup guard that we can just sort of groom a mold to take over from Matt Nelson, obviously as a 6 lineman, and then sort of have him there as a backup guard, kind of like how we had Evan Brown and Josh Pierschbacher and Cody Husika this year. Is that kind of player. So just went, again, it's just a shot in the dark. I went with someone that we've had a top 30 visit with. And then with my other pick, I've also gone backup quarterback, and it's someone I profiled, Jaron Hall out of BYU. Insert what we've said about Clayton Tune pretty much. It's just a slightly different person. Perhaps a tiny bit more mobility than Tune, but slightly worse as a passer. But it swings and roundabouts at this point.
Tom.
Yeah, so this is probably about as unsexy a pick as it comes. But we're at the stage we've just lost 2 linebackers who played a lot of special team reps. And I'm looking for guys who, great, if they get starter reps, I'm all for it. But in reality, I want to get guys who I think can be top-end special teamers. Was very tempted by Owen Papo, linebacker here, nicknamed the Freak. Most of the reason I wanted to draft him was that, but also I think he's a really good player, incredibly explosive athlete. I went for a guy who was a slightly less explosive player, but I think probably is more of a fit for the Lions in that he's, I mean, a line I'm going to read from the Beast draft guide here, but if linebackers were drafted solely based on their competitive grit, football character, and tackling violence, Cam Jones, linebacker out of Indiana, would be picked much higher. I think he's going to be a serious special teamer, and I think the Lions need that. But I also like how, unlike some of these other more kind of fringe linebacker prospects, most of them play weak side, and I want a guy who can step in at Mike. And Jones has shown that he can do that. So he's not the highest upside player in the world, but he does do a lot of things very well. He's got short area quickness. He's got vision. Can he get reps at linebacker? Yes, if something happens to Alex Anzalone, potentially. But I'm drafting him predominantly as a special teamer.
Steve.
Yeah, so it's my last pick, and I wanted to sign off with something spectacular. So let's draft a kicker. Let's draft Jake Moody.
Oh,
Steve! Come on. I've been so sensible all the way through. I've taken this so seriously, but come on, just indulge me. Let's draft a kicker. I mean, he is a very good kicker, and is anyone completely sold on the Money Badger?
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah, I am.
Compared to him, yes.
I don't think Jake Moody gets drafted. I'll say that now. Like, he was potentially
people are saying he's going in round 5.
Yeah, I know. People are deluded. He had a really, really bad postseason, like, workout, pro day, whatever. Like, in the combine or whatever it was, he missed like 4 of 9. Which is not something you do when you're in front
it was
of...
windy, come on.
Yeah, but the other kickers didn't do that badly.
I'll tell you
I'll
tell you exactly what that is. That is a kiss ass to the chat so that they upgrade his grade by a full grade because he's picking the home kicker. That's exactly what
I think it's
is.
More likely to get me lynched on the chat drafting a kicker.
So
I don't know. A lot of them are Michigan fans, so...
I'm officially dropping an amber alert here. That is the anti-Michigan bias alert team. So, yeah, no, Steve.
Okay.
All right.
I tried.
So, I am up. What did I do? I went for another player that I profiled, and it's a player that I said was redundant for who we have already. But then I went and drafted him anyway because I thought it was value on the board, and I actually thought that, you know what? It's only a redundant pick if you don't think that he can't replace the player he's redundant for in case of injury. And in that effect, he'll come in and do very, very well. And that's Aubrey Miller from Jackson State. Now, I kind of projected him as a 6th round pick. He's available here in the middle of the 6th round, so I think the value is there. He's a real kind of see ball, hit ball type of guy. Very aggressive, very fast in a straight line. Deion Sanders, a massive fan of his, leader of the defense. I do worry that sometimes his movement skills aren't the best from side to side, but I think that's something you can develop. I think that he's redundant to Malcolm. I think Malcolm would start over him, but as a developmental guy at linebacker, I think he provides depth in a position where there isn't a lot of depth to be had. I think he'll contribute on special teams, and he's a character guy, and he's going to be a Dan Campbell guy. So, as much as anything else, he's going to add to the locker room, and we'll see about the rest. Ryan.
I've gone for a guy that is very close to my heart. He's buried in a very deep running back class, and he has special teams upsides. I've gone for Weapon X, Xavier Balladair. Maybe a bit of a reach, but the numbers don't lie. 3 1,000-yard seasons in his I think it was like 4,000 for 1,000 seasons in like 5 years. I'm pretty sure he was the active SBS rushing leader entering the draft. 4,462 yards. He's the definition of a bell cow. 6 foot. He had like the 9th best RAS score. Super athletic. He also had 16 rushing touchdowns this year, and the best in the nation. And the Sun Devils were putrid. He is a guy that can produce on a team. It doesn't matter how bad it is. The Wyoming Cowboys are never very good. Now, he's got a lot of mileage, but surprisingly, very few injuries for a guy that can carry the ball 250 times a year. He is an absolute unit. Athletically, he's very gifted. As a receiving weapon, non-existent. Don't need him to. Can he pass block? Yes. Does he get asked to? No. But he went to the East-West Shrine Bowl and had some very good blocking exercises. So I feel like this guy is an absolute gem. And as a pure power back, I feel like he can complement Montgomery well. He's a little bit more shifty. That's not what Xavier's about. He don't care about being elusive. Going to run through you, and he's proved at the FBS and the Power 5 level, he can run through guys. And he had something like 150 missed tackles throughout the last 3 or 4 years. Like I say, he is hard to get hold of. He is a weapon, and I love him.
And finally, Ant.
So yeah, before the draft, before my trade actually in this draft, this is where I also had running back. So honorary shout out to Evan Hull, who would be my top number 1 running back if we got to day 3. The guy from Northwestern, he would be the guy otherwise. There was a few others I was thinking about. I was wondering whether I should take Jadicus Bonds, the wide receiver, but I thought we do have a quarterback need. We do need a QB2, and this is a hill that I am going to die on alone, with no one to love me and no one to be with me, because no one else thinks like this, but I just see something that no one else does. If you wanted to hear my read down about him, go back to the QB show. He was the first guy I did. I'm, of course, talking about quarterback Lindsey Scott Jr. from Incarnate Word. He is the dual threat quarterback from there. I think he's got a really high ceiling in the league, potentially. I think he could even be a low-end starter, given enough years in the system. But for me, instantly, he's going to come in onto our scout team and give this team something that it's not had for years, which is a true dual threat guy to train against and prepare for. You know, he is a sneaky good passer. He is so great with his legs. He runs a 4.5 40. He possesses elite speed. And to be able to train and practice against him, I think will be invaluable for the team in the short-term future. And I think as you're developing him, especially if like Teddy comes into the team or something, you've got a steady 2 in there as well. I think he can just sit there, be developed, and over time be worked into the system. And even if he's not going to be your quarterback 1, you could very well run some kind of Taysom Hill-esque scheme with him, where you bring him in as a runner, where you bring him in surprise situations, and there's so much you can do with him, which I think a lot of these other day 3 guys just don't offer. They offer you a safe floor, but I don't think they offer you the potential upside that Lindsey Scott does. So it's my last pick. I'm going to go QB2. I've had my extra picks, so I feel a lot safer about making this. If we have just 8 picks, I'll get him in priority free agency if I can. But because I've got the extra 2, I'll take him here. I love Lindsey Scott, and I hope he's a Lion by the time the draft is done and dusted.
All right, draft's done. Let's have a look at round 6, and then we'll round out everyone's draft.
Can I just say that thank you, Ant, for teaching me something today. I had no idea what Incarnate Word was. I've had to just Google it. I thought it was like a Dungeons and Dragons like spell.
Or some remote outpost up in Scotland. Sorry, Steve. I had to. I love you, really. Apart from that kicker pick.
Wow. I always try and boil someone's piss.
Exactly. No one's perfect.
See, the news of Teddy Bridgewater changed how I mocked. Making him an offer, I think if you sign Teddy, I think you take a quarterback in the first round. If you're going to give him a quarterback with a mentor of Teddy and Jared, I think you go first round quarterback. I think you give him the best 2 guys he could learn from, or you don't take one at all. And that's why I didn't take a developmental guy. I just feel like if you're bringing in Teddy, you're giving him the best football mind you can, and then you take one at 6. That's why. If we'd not that, I'd have probably gone with like DTR if I didn't know we'd given Teddy an offer.
DTR's the guy that if I'm not taking Richardson, one of these 6 rounders, and it might even be, to be honest, it might be a higher pick than that, I'm taking DTR.
So 2 things quickly. Aubrey Miller's going to be a stud, and I think he'll be long gone in the draft before there. But if we get him at that point, I'd be absolutely delighted. And 2, do you think Voorhees is going to fall that far, Tom? What do you reckon? How far do you reckon he's going to go? Because that is really, don't forget, he should be a 2nd round pick. Is he going to drop 4 rounds?
But and again, you can only take so much from media stuff. I think PFF have him quite high, but you look at other places, and he's all over the map in terms of where he's projected to go. And I mean, he's not going to play this year, so I think it's perfect for the Lions, especially with Graham Glasgow signed on a 1-year deal. But I think a lot of people aren't gonna. I think he can fall to that, and he's not a great athlete, so there are definitely questions with him. He's an older guy as well. So we'll have to see, I guess. In fact, it's probably a way we can look at. Well, Matt, do you have your consensus board to hand, or
I can get it.
I do, but it actually needs updating now that the Beast is out and TDN have released their MDM, which means that things are going to change quite a lot. But what do you want me to have a look at?
I was interested in where Voorhees was on certain boards now.
I haven't really updated for him, unfortunately. So he's at 101.
Okay.
Voorhees.
101, Ash.
I'm looking at I'm on mock draft database to see what they have. They're a slightly different one. They collate all the like medium mock drafts and sort of. Let's have a look. Andrew Voorhees. He is currently 130th in mock drafts right now, with the best rank at 45.
I just think he'll fall that far. I mean, he was a fringe round 2, round 3 prospect when healthy. So now he's not playing the full first year. How many rounds does that drop you? Like, I'm sorry, but I think mid day 3 is perfectly reasonable.
It happens at Mitchell, I guess.
Yeah, and so to sort of kick Tom when he's down, but the Cam Jones one was the last pick. It's the one I like the least. I profiled him for our like sort of special pick one. He is a slimmer Jelani Tavai. The dude is it okay, like run defender. If you ask him to do anything in coverage or go side to side, you're done for. I agree, you could do some stuff on like special teams maybe, but for me, there's just linebackers and safeties in that sort of realm that can do the special team stuff and have a lot more upside in terms of usefulness on defense. It's the only pick of yours I hated, Tom, and I'm sorry to say it.
I'm sure lots of people hated a number of my picks, so I am okay with that. For me, like I say, I don't think he's going to be someone that gets lots of reps. And I've taken some flyers probably earlier in the draft. So it was just about getting someone I think is going to be a really good kind of culture character fit and is going to be someone who's going to play a lot of special teams reps. Because I'm not entirely sure where those are going to come from currently. So, he's definitely not the kind of pick that you're like, oh, I can't wait to get Cam Jones on my team. But I just think he's someone that's going to be valuable once he's in the league to teams.
Yeah, he can definitely be like the Josh Woods replacement. I know JRM is the Board replacement, which is funny because Board was the JRM replacement. But yeah, we need that Woods replacement, and he could be it. It's just other players I'd probably take higher, but at least it's not me moaning about Anthony Richardson again.
Ash, do you really think Jaron Hall's going to last that long? Because I know that we were talking about him when we did the quarterback show, but like some people have him as like a fringe day 2 guy in some of their mocks, and some of them has a kind of like mid day 3 guy. So maybe he lasts that long, but like I don't know.
He's old and has a massive injury history. That doesn't help for quarterbacks. That's what's going to kill him.
And if it doesn't last, then if it's then I'd probably take Aiden O'Connor or Clayton Jr. What is that sort of bracket of QB? It's just I liked him the most out of the ones that are available. Hell, if we really want to get spicy, we could like Tyler Bagent maybe. I know we're supposedly really interested in him, and he has the big arm and that. There's not much taping him out, but the tiny bits I've seen on Twitter and that he can run the offense. So we could take a flyer on him. It's just Paul was there and I like him, so to take a shot.
Right, let me run down everyone's draft, and then guys in the chat, let us know who you think has the best mock overall, who has maybe the best, most realistic mock overall, because obviously you might think that someone has done almost too well and it's not realistic. Who hasn't done so well? Gives your thoughts, and we'll talk about that at the end. And then if you've got any questions, generally we'll get that in for the post-audio show. All right, starting off with Ant. Traded down from 6 with Atlanta to 8, picking up 110 and 113 in the process, going cornerback Devon Witherspoon, nickelback safety Brian Branch, defensive tackle Keanu Benton, linebacker Deion Henley, running back Israel Abanikanda, defensive end Isaiah McGuire, wide receiver Puka Nakua, offensive tackle Mark Evans II, guard Chandler Zavala, and quarterback Lindsey Scott Jr. Guys, what do we think as a whole?
Love it. I think it's my favorite of the mocks. And like I say, I think the trade down is just so valuable to get those extra guys. I really like the top 5 picks as well. So, yeah, I just think there's a lot to like.
I think it's the best day 3 guys. But if Zavala falls that far, I'd be very happy. And Lindsey Scott Jr. He's a great dual threat guy. Like you say, a good guy to play against. Best probably for working with defense.
I don't know whether we're going to go 4 consecutive defensive picks. That's the only thing I can think at looking at it. But then I'm looking at it thinking this could be the one that actually pushes us into NFC contention. Like, I'm looking at my own draft and contrasting it and thinking, Matthew Bergeron, okay, fine, but you could put Benton, which I took later, or Henley or someone like that, and I'm thinking, yeah, that could be the one that pushes us over the top, and actually makes us something. So I really love it overall. I just don't buy into Lindsey Scott, but at 194, I don't care. Like, take a flyer on him, that's fine.
I love Ant's draft that he's gone 4 defensive players in the first 4 picks. I'm just like, for me, Branch is a luxury pick at 18. Like, I'm just not sure that that's the biggest need. So that's kind of like the only thing for me. Like, I mean, I love him as a player, but it just feels like a bit of a luxury.
I appreciate you guys. I don't care what the chat thinks now. That you like it makes me happy.
Right, let's go for Ryan's. Everyone else, in fact, did not trade, so I won't talk about that. Ryan went for Jalen Carter at 6 defensive tackle, cornerback Joey Porter Jr. at 18, at 48 linebacker Diane Henley, 55 defensive end Isaiah Foskey, 81 cornerback Riley Moss, 152 guard Jackson Kirkland, 183 wide receiver Justin Shorter, and 194 running back. How do you say that, Ryan?
Xavier.
Is Xavier. Okay, Xavier Valade. Thank you. What do we think?
With Carter and Foskey on our defensive line, quarterbacks will die. Like, the pair of them are so damn explosive. I mean, Foskey is. I don't get why Foskey doesn't get more love in this draft, but putting those 2 explosive pass rushers on this team with all the guys that we have, someone's going to die. I really like that. And of course, Henley's in there. Moss, again, I just love it if we did just for Ram. I think Moss has proven a lot of people wrong, given the whole narrative over cornerbacks and guys like him not having much success. I think he's as Dan Campbell a guy as you get. I love it. And then you've got guys that you're going to get for the future there. I think we've got the same thinking. Defense heavy early and then get your next offensive guys and develop them over time. I like that approach for us.
I think Joey Porter Jr. is interesting because you don't see him get mocked to the Lions that often. I think someone's going to really fall in love with Porter. And I actually think kind of my semi-hot take is I think he'll go ahead of Witherspoon. Only because I think someone is going to see him, see the bloodlines, see the fact that he tested pretty well, and the fact that he is just like freakishly long. So if that's what you're looking for from a stylistic standpoint in your boundary corners, I could see someone really kind of, I don't want to say reaching for him. I think that's unfair. I just think going for him over someone who I think is a much better player, but does obviously have some limitations if you are looking purely at measurables in Witherspoon.
I would have agreed before Witherspoon did his like individual pro day because he really tore it up there. But I think Porter, if we didn't go Witherspoon, I think at 6, Porter won't be there at 18 for us. I don't think he's getting past the Steelers because there's just such a connection there for him and he would fit their scheme so well. So for me, I love Ryan's draft. If it happens, I'll be happy. But I don't think Porter's going to be there because I don't think he's getting past the Steelers.
All right, looking at mine, defensive end Will Anderson at 6, cornerback Deontay Banks at 18, tackle Matthew Bergeron at 48, defensive tackle Keanu Benton at 55, wide receiver A.T. Perry at 81, running back Keaton Mitchell at 152, quarterback Clayton Tune at 183, and linebacker Aubrey Miller at 194. What do you think?
Awful. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I really like that, Matt. I would go, if I'm taking a corner at 18, I don't think Witherspoon will be there. And I'd go Banks over Porter because I just think Porter is a bit penalty. Kind of like concedes too many penalties from what I've seen and what I've read. So I think Banks is maybe a better prospect. And I like Bergeron at 48, but I'm not sure he'll be there.
See, Bergeron's a weird one for me. He's a left tackle, and I kind of feel like the need should be on right. I don't know if he's going to translate over to the other side. I think position's fine. I might just pick a little bit differently at that point in terms of guy I'm going to put on there. Same with Banks. I think corner 18, but I don't buy the hype that Banks is an 18 guy. I think there might be others, but position-wise, yeah, there's not a lot to disagree with at all. And I know you've put Aubrey in just because, but that Aubrey pick is a really good pick, even if your intentions are not pure when making it. He is a smash mouth linebacker. I mean, I think he'll pair well with Barnes. I said this. I think the way he will go on and take the advancing blocker down the field, just absolutely pile drive him into non-existence whilst Barnes does the damage. I think that would be a tandem that would work, and I would love it if he got there. So I think there's some smart picks in there.
Character assassination.
What? Why are my intentions not pure with Aubrey Miller, bastard?
You said your literal introduction was, if this is a guy I've already said I wouldn't pick because it's redundant, but that's not a great endorsement there. So, you should be. I am absolutely delighted to make this pick because he's still on the board. This would be an absolute steal. Then I would understand the passion about it.
I really like the Perry pick, love the Benton pick. Banks is one that I did as part of the corner reviews we did, and I was and probably still am a little lower on him. That being said, I like the fit because a lot of the guys, if you look at again, not to go talk measurables, athletic testing, blah, 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 a lot of the DBs we brought in are actually very similar and probably lacking a little bit of kind of size and length. And if you think about the kind of receivers we face in the NFC North quite a lot, it's those kind of big, fast guys. So I think Banks's athletic profile, but also just his size would be quite a nice fit.
All right, moving on to Steve's draft at 6, cornerback Devon Witherspoon, 18, tackle Darnell Wright, 48, defensive tackle Muzzy Smith, 55, tight end Sam Laporta, 81, linebacker DeMarvion Overshone, 152, wide receiver Elijah Higgins, 183, quarterback Aiden O'Connell, and 194, why did he do it? Kicker Jake Moody. What do you think?
I love him picking Aiden O'Connell because I love Aiden O'Connell. And I think he's got one of the best chances of these day 3 guys of making it in the NFL as a starter. So, Steve, you've got great taste in day 3 quarterbacks. I will say that to you. Outside of that, it's good. Again, position-wise, it's great. I mean, Marzi, Marzi's just not my cup of tea. But again, DT there, I've done the same myself. So we're thinking along the same lines. Sam, I love. I think he's a great underrated tight end, and I think he's the perfect tight end out of this entire class for the Lions. I think you can get him a smidge later, but if you get him there, don't really care. DeMarvian could also be great. I'm a little skeptical, but I think overall you've done well. You just ruined it with that kicker at the end.
Yeah, if you're going to go for a special teams guy, you've obviously should have gone for Longstacker, Robert Sundholm from William and Mary. That's the obvious upgrade at special teams we need.
Ash, you've nailed it. That's where I've gone wrong.
Such a miss, Steve. Come on.
Guys, right? I'm the only person that's picked a tight end in any round.
Because we don't need one.
Yeah,
we don't need one.
What?
I'm a believer in James Mitchell, and a big believer. If Zylstra and Wright can be competent tight end 2s and 3s, and Mitchell shows his promise, we don't need one. And I would like to give Mitchell at least a chance.
I think Justin Shaw, he will be a tight end.
And then for me, there's a tight end I'm targeting in UDFA that could come in and fit and do a lot of special team stuff as well. So,
sorry, and Steve, how dare you write off Penay Sewell, the tight end? That's just awful.
Well, yeah, there is that. But I mean, I'm not. I can see with my own eyes. I don't need for all the draft guys to tell me the Lions needs, because I watch enough of them. But every draft guide has got tight end as one of our top 3 needs. Every single one.
Well, and you can see why that they do. We don't have a tight end 1 as it stands on the roster. So tight end being a need makes sense if you don't follow the Lions closely. But
and I'm a James Mitchell believer as well, but I've just not seen very much from him.
I mean, I would tell you that I'm not a massive James Mitchell believer. I think he'll be a solid tight end 2 in the league, but I think Brock Wright's shown enough. James Mitchell actually hasn't had the time yet to show it, but Brock Wright, a couple of years in a row now, has shown that he can block fairly effectively and has home run speed. He's got 2 touchdowns longer than 50 yards at tight end, and he's a good blocker. So the guy just needs a little bit more reps, but he's shown that he can do it already.
I wouldn't say he's a red zone threat though. In the same way that Hawkinson could be. And that's why I kind of drafted Laporte, because I kind of feel that we need something in the red zone.
Does anyone think Darnell Washington makes it to 48? And if so, would you be interested?
No, I think it's
Darnell's going round 1.
Yeah.
I think it's measurables. I mean, this is a year, because there's not that much bona fide round 1 talent this year. I think a lot of guys with the elite measurables are getting pushed up. You look at Adebare, you look at even Mazzy Smith tested really well. Guys like that are pushing up, and Darnell has just crazy mismatch potential at the next level, like Musgrave. So I think you'll just see them get pushed up because of that lack of bona fide talent.
I think he'll be there. I think he'll go to 48. Tight end, there are positions that the NFL GMs are just lower on than the public. It happens every single year. Safeties drop, defensive tackles drop, tight ends drop. They all do every single year. I should make a chart about consensus mock draft position versus actual draft position for positions, because I think it would prove the point fairly decisively. But tight ends always fall. Pretty much always. And Darnell Washington, despite being the mismatch weapon that Ant so ably described, is not the best pass catcher in the class. In fact, in terms of the top tight end talents,
top 3 pass catchers.
Yeah, exactly. So for what GMs generically look for in terms of tight end, it's pass catching ability. And so if you look at what GMs are going to do, I think he might be tight end 4 or tight end 5 in this class, because I think that's how they're going to draft. It's not what I think, but I think that's what they'll do. And if he's tight end 5, he might well be there at 48. In fact, I expect him to be there at 48. The problem is, every simulator I do doesn't have him there. And so I couldn't take him on that basis. But I think if he is there, if I have to choose between Bergeron at tackle and tight end for him, I've got a really hard choice, because one's going to play every single down, and one's just a developmental guy, but at a more important position. So I don't know. But I think he will be there.
Two tight ends have been drafted in the top 50 in the last 3 years. Kyle Pitts, which I don't think we can really talk about in the kind of same sentence as the other guys, and Cole Kmet went at 43. That's it in the last 3 years. A lot of guys taken
Who's
in that
Cole
kind of.
Kmet?
But I think this is the best tight end class maybe of all time, though.
It's
And-
definitely a better class, but I think Kincaid is going to, if the medicals check out, I think Kincaid goes high.
Yeah. So
And it wouldn't surprise me if someone like Washington did. One of these guys, maybe two of these guys, to me, has got to fall. I don't think more than two tight ends are coming off before pick 48.
You won't convince Ant. He thinks that more tight ends are going in the first and offensive tackles. So,
But this is
I
this is
think
kind of
four.
why I've picked him. Like I've been able to pick him at 55 with our fourth pick. That's kind of why I kind of think there's value in this class and getting like a potential upgrade. So it wasn't just that I purely was desperate to pick a tight end, but it just seems to me like there's real value there.
The trouble is the drop off at a certain part when it gets to the Titan class is massive, and I mean massive. The drop off is, so the team's going to be scared that they're going to miss out on the top guys. I think it's going to push the value up, and I think you don't have a dearth of top offensive tackles this year. You certainly don't have a dearth of top wide receivers. Genuine like last year. I said there were going to be tons of wide receivers. There were. Loads. You don't have that this year, so something's got to replace them. And out of the general traditional like positional value places, there's not a lot of depth in some of the good ones this year. So that's just why I feel like I'm going to push them up a little bit.
I think the thing about the tight end class, I go the other way. I agree there's a big drop off, but it's after 5 good players. Like, I think there's a lack of FOMO with the tight end class, because it's like, oh, get to 18, and it's like, oh, I'll probably get one of the top 5 at 48. And you get to 19, I'll probably get one of the top 5 at 50. Like, I just think there'll be that sort of idea of, unless someone's absolutely wedded to a guy, which I don't think happens at tight end as much as does at quarterback. I just don't think there's any fear of missing out here at all.
They're becoming more of a. I think they're becoming more of a threat in the league again, especially your good passing guys like Kincaid and Musgrave. They just have such high ceilings for those type of roles you need. I think it's going to push the value up. That's just me. I could well be wrong.
Fair. All right. Where did I get to? I did Steve, didn't I? So Tom's draft. At 6, quarterback Anthony Richardson. 18, cornerback safety Brian Branch. 48, defensive lineman Adi Adabare. 55, defensive end BJ Ojolari. 81, defensive tackle Zach Pickens. 152, wide receiver Michael Wilson. 183, guard Andrew Voorhees. And 194, linebacker Cam Jones. What do you make of it?
So this is the ultimate boom or bust draft for me. And I know Tom loves those kind of players. And, there are picks that I love and picks that I hate because of it. I mean, Pickens, I love Pickens. I think the way that he plays against the run, specifically his ability to get through blocks, deconstruct them, is immense. It's really his calling card, and I think we need someone like that who can really be effective against the run. And he's a former 5-star guy who's kind of not even really began to show what he can do yet, and he's still done pretty well. So you get to that. I love that. BJ Ojolari is sneakily that is good, and now Tom said that, all the major organizations are listening to him. So I've seen PFF now blowing smoke up him, and they're like, when Tom says something, they listen. So, but then there's just guys, I'm convinced if we took out a Tom Ewer, I feel like he would continue our second round curse. I honestly do, with just, he's positionless and he's not done much on a really bad Northwestern side when you can get draft attention. Skoronski, Evan Hall this year has gotten love, and he's just not done it. And it's like, I get where the thing is there, but I just feel like that's a lot more bust than boom with him. But then you go to other guys. Wilson, sneaky. I'd love Wilson at 152. I don't know if he'll get there, but I think he could be great. We love Brian Branch. I love that. And Anthony Richardson, I wouldn't be unopposed to either. So yeah, it's boom or bust, but for the most part, I really like it. There's just a couple there that I'm just like,
I mean,
completely agree. So it's a rough. Oh, go on.
No, you
go first. I was going to say, I'm going to read out the tweet that PFF College were obviously listening to this podcast, especially Trevor Sycamore, who has said about BJ Ojolari, just as Tom was saying about him. there aren't many edge rushers of the kind of with the kind of speed and bend Ojulari has. So much so that I'm shocked he's not in more first round mock drafts. So Tom has found a real steal, as we're saying, found a real steal edge rusher, someone who PFF obviously seems to be higher on than quite a lot of places. And if you get him where he does, that's a complete steal. He could be a starting edge. Maybe we could, if push comes to the shove, could that like next year, if maybe the Pascal experiment doesn't work out, if Kaminsky doesn't reach what we want him to do to stay around, but Ojulari shows stuff. We could move Hutch back to the like closed end spot, put Ojulari at the open spot, and that could be a great edge tandem. And you've got it at such a steal.
I do think it's probably my favourite mock, but that's just because I'm, without doubt, probably the highest on Anthony Richardson on the pod. He's the only guy who has he's got the highest ceiling of anyone in the draft. I'll say that. That's what I think of him. And I mean, he could bust, maybe. But I just don't see it with him because of his rushing threat, because of his intangibles, because of the way he processes the game. Yeah, he's only had 13 starts, but this guy is going to be an absolute home run. The only point I have against Tom's draft is I really, 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 really don't think he's there at 6. And I know that you were saying about moving up to 3 for him. I really don't think he'll be there at 3.
Oh, interesting.
Really,
Okay.
really, really don't think he'll be there at 3.
No, I think he's going at 3. I think that's 3 is where he'll go.
Who do you think gets, if he goes 1 or 2, is it Young or Stroud who falls?
Stroud.
Okay.
Yeah. I think so. Young's moved ahead in the betting again for Carolina at 1.
Has he?
Yeah.
Yeah,
since
see,
he's
this
been
is the problem
away,
with being out of the loop for 2 weeks. I mean, I assume Stroud was still like, he was like 3-1 on last time I checked. So.
It's in the space you've gone from Stroud being the clear favourite to Richardson being the clear favourite to now it's Bryce Young. It's gone everywhere.
Fine, okay.
It's always Bryce Young. I don't understand where it's pure speculation. Like Young has done enough. I just can't see Carolina not taking Young. I think it would be crazy.
The Carolina GM should be walking around with a piece of paper in his pocket, and we all know what it says. You know.
Yes.
We all know. We all know the film there. So Bryce Young, no matter what.
And I think that anything else is just purely like speculation to try and revive some interest in the number 1 pick. But the number 1 pick, I think, has been decided for the last 18 months.
No, they should go Richardson. They absolutely should go Richardson. I'm sorry, but Young does not have the ceiling that Richardson has, and Carolina's team on defense is so young that he could develop with them. Like, Carolina's team is not fit
if
to
you're
win
a
a Super
GM,
Bowl.
You're going to get yourself fired doing that. That's how GMs get fired.
The Texans should take Richardson because you can still get mileage out of Davis Mills as a starter whilst Richardson sits and learns. Carolina don't have that luxury for me. He's going there, he's starting regardless. The Texans can keep Mills in for another year. Hopefully he has a good year, garners some value. They trade him off, make Richardson their starter. If Richardson doesn't get to 3, it's because he's gone at 2, not 1.
So entertain me, but I guess keep it quick. But let's just say Stroud and Richardson go off the board 1 and 2 in whatever order you want. Are any of you making a move to go get Bryce Young?
As long as I don't get my pants, as long as I don't get my pants pulled down,
You will.
that would be the thing. Yeah, well, the Cardinals don't have that many good draft picks this year, so I think they'll settle for an underball offer. I don't think. I know apparently 6 teams have called them, but I don't think the price is going to be that high for that. So, as long as I didn't get my pants pulled down, I'd consider it.
Especially since it's come.
Yeah.
I was going to say, especially since it's come out that Indy have had a private workout with Will Levis, and literally everyone who could have any insight in the quarterback position for them was there. The GM was there, the head coach was there, the head of college scouting was there, Jim Bob Cooters, the OC was there, the quarterback coach was there, the assistant quarterback coach was there, the wide receiver coach was there.
Yes, but
Literally
then
everyone's
the most attention on him was in the blooming tea room where he got the mayonnaise out.
Yeah,
and the Oscar goes to the Indianapolis Colts.
Put it this way: if we did trade up and get him, then the first thing I'd do is trade Jared Goff. Goodbye, because Bryce Young is starting next year. regardless. He's your starter. You don't trade up for him and sit him. I trade Jared Goff if we go up and get Bryce Young and get some of my picks back.
What would our offense look like with Bryce Young? Can anyone like picture like how would that work?
Bryce and JMO have worked together before, so you've got instant connectivity there with them two, and I think it would work really well. That'll be the best receiving group that JMO's ever had, that Bryce has ever had to work with by a long shot. And with his tight ends, he's never been blessed with great tight ends at Alabama either. It was Latu last year, was it Billingsley the year before? Got some good tight ends here, and I think he'd work really well. And I think he's Detroit grit. I mean, take a look at the shellacking he gets in that Tennessee game, and he's still up and fighting by the end. I think he fits this team to a T, but I'm absolutely starting in week 1 if somehow he slides. And I'm sorry, but as much as I love Goff, and I say he should have year 3, if you're going to do that, you can't sit him and do that.
But that's where I think going and getting someone like a Teddy would be perfect, because I do have concerns about his ability to hold up physically. And so with Young, I think having someone who is a capable backup rather than a Nate Sudfeld would probably be more important, unfortunately.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you want like a sort of something you can physically see to compare, Seahawks offense with Russell Wilson, Doug Baldwin, and Tyler Lockett. So Gemma being the Tyler Lockett, Bryce Young being the Russell Wilson, and then Amon-Ra being like the Doug Baldwin sort of do-it-all slot receiver.
All right, we have one more draft to go through, and then we'll end the audio pod and go on to the questions for the post-show. Ash's draft started off at 6 with cornerback Devon Witherspoon, at 18 guard Osiris Torrance, 48 linebacker Diane Henley, 55 defensive tackle Keanu Benton, 81 nickelback slot Jamie Robinson, 152 wide receiver Andre Yoshivas, 183 tackle guard Jordan McFadden, and 194 quarterback Jaron Hall. What do you make of it?
I think outside of Jaron, I would have no issues at all. I just don't like Jaron that much.
I think you get a lot of starter reps for this season, which like you definitely can't say about by draft. So I think you're not going all in, that's the wrong term, but you're getting guys who you think are going to really contribute this year. I think Torrance, you could argue with the moves we've made, might not play as much this year, but I just think he's damn good. So I think he probably would get on the field. And we've seen how quickly the O-line can fall apart, and you could be looking at your second and third choice guys. Witherspoon, for me, would be getting on the field straight away. Henley, I think, would certainly be competing and definitely contributing on special teams. Benton, I think, would be getting more reps than people might think out of a mid-second rounder. So I think you're getting a lot of early contributions from those guys.
Sorry, just to very quickly go back to Tom's, you mentioned an over-under there, Tom. What would be the over-under of starter reps for your draft next year?
Great question. And we're not counting special teams, right?
Everyone else have your say on Ash's draft. I'm going to try and mock up an over-under here and see what you'd say. So carry on.
I love your round 1 and 2, Ash. Absolutely love it.
Thank you.
I don't like Osiris Torrance at 18, and I probably should have spoken up at the time, but I think it's a big reach. Like,
I agree.
He is not a scheme fit, particularly because he's not a good mover. He's just a powerful guy who's a good guard, generally speaking. But I think with our gap scheme, he's not a fit. And also, I think I see a lot of mocks of him falling at the first round, falling to 35, 40. I don't think we can get him at 48, but that doesn't mean I want to go and get him at 18. And I think there's other guys I can maybe go and get, or I think that with Glasgow in there, right guard backup, or maybe starting with Big V at backup, I just don't see the benefit of taking a guard that high. And also, I'm not sure whether Yoshivas is there at 152 or Jaron Hall's there at 194, but those are lower key things. It's more just, I like everything else apart from Torrance.
I agree, though. That's the thing. I did try and look for trades 18 because it was just, I didn't love who was on the board there, honestly. And it just couldn't find something that was realistic without me doing my usual, like, let's get as many picks for next year so we can trade up and get eventual Heisman winner Jordan Travis to be our QB of the future.
Oh.
So I had to go.
You did so well to not mention it until this point.
Wait, are we doing fantasy drafts now?
On that point, though, it's very easy for you to, we can say FSU Homer. Robinson at 81, I'd love. If you don't go and get Branch, I think that's his kind of range. Yeah, if you don't want to overinvest, let's say, in a premium asset like Branch, I think Robinson in that kind of 80-ish slot. So for the Lions, 81 is really good.
All right, fellas, any final thoughts before we wrap up the audio pod?
Yeah, I want to go back to this over-under on Tom's draft class. So I'm going to set it at 500 snaps for the lot of them all year. Would anyone take the under on that? I mean,
just on offense or defense?
No, on all of them. Like literally the
on
whole
special
draft
teams
class.
as well.
Oh, hang
Actually,
on. No,
not
not special teams. No, because Cam Smith will probably get 500 on his own for that. So 500.
I think Tom's jet lag's just about to kick in.
500 starter reps over under in that class.
I'm gonna need my D line to really represent.
I will take the. It really depends on Richardson and what happens with Goff, because I still think he's a day one starter. But presuming that everyone else is right and I'm wrong, I'll take the under.
I'd still take the over because I believe in these guys. But look, we're building for the future here.
Well, no,
if
if
want
I'm
to be
talking...
someone who's threatening Super Bowls for 10 years.
Oh, no, if we're talking about whose draft class could be the best in 5 years and the most like legacy to it, then Tom's is definitely in play here, more so than others. I'm just saying starter snaps for year one. I'm not having a go at it. Anyone taking the over?
Tom
is. All right, that's one apiece. Matt?
Under.
2-1 under. Ash?
Under, barring obvious injuries.
Oh, thank God, I thought I was going to have to do a tiebreaker there.
All right, well, there we go. Savage.
Tom, I'm your biggest fan, but after not drafting a tight end, I'm going to take a hard pass, I'm afraid.
Very, very quickly, I'm going to ignore all of you, obviously. Very quickly, is there anyone you look at in your own draft and you're like, kind of wish I'd gone in a different direction?
Just about everybody. I love a lot of players in this. I think anyone after the second round is fair game because there are so many guys that I like here. Yeah.
I was going to ask the question. So Tom's obviously gone with Richardson. I think pretty much all of us have gone with a developmental QB. If Hendon Hooker was there, say at 55, and I'll ask the same question again at 81, how many of you would take Hooker at 55 if he was there?
No,
I would.
Nope.
Tom, you would?
Yeah. Part of that is I like Hooker as a player, but also I think my biggest takeaway from this process was I really don't like 48 and 55 in the range. So that's the kind of guy that I'd be willing to throw a dart at. But to be honest, I want to get out of one of those picks and get more capital down the line. So I think there's just it's a short list of people that I actually want to take with 48 and 55. So
do we put faith in the stock that they might try and trade up again with them too? Maybe?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think they should say. They should go one way or the other. Either go up and get the guy that you have faith in, or drop back and pick up some extra capital.
All right, I'm going to take this conversation off the audio pod and onto the post-show on YouTube and Twitch. If you're on the audio pod and you want to listen to a bit more chat from us, do go and join us live 2:30 Eastern time on Mondays all the way up to the draft. And then our draft show spectacular, our third show, should have a representative from every single team, from people just like us who know our team just as well. So you want to tune in for the best draft coverage, not from NFL Network, on the internet. Our next episode, this time next week, on the main show, Monday, April 17th, it's our full first round mock draft and who is going to get the spoils. come draft day from that episode in terms of who is getting the most picks right in the right position to the right team. College Pod will have an episode this week, TBC on when, but it's a Mac episode, and
Yeah, so one of our friends from our Discord channel actually is a writer about the Mid-Athletic Conference. It's one of the Group of 5 conferences. So we're going to focus on the MAC draft prospects and talk a little MAC football from 2022 because we are a college show, and with this draft stuff, kind of gets lost in the action a bit. So we're going to move it back to college stuff for a while.
Otherwise, you can find us on Roar the Lions UK on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And the Facebook group for Worldwide Fans is Teacher at Lions Fans UK 1 Pride Worldwide. The website, rotluk.com. Don't forget to subscribe and rate us 5 stars. If you're on YouTube and Twitch, if you can throw us a super chat or a subscription or any of that jazz, please and thank you. Otherwise, on the audio pod, we'll see you later in the week for the college show and then the full first round mock next week. But for now, let's go Lions, one pride.
One pride.
One pride.
Recording stopped.
Right. A few questions to get to from the show. I don't know if anyone has to jump off. Tom, you're
I will
probably
jump relatively
suffering.
soon. I'm starting to flag, but
Dan Pask asks us, in the sort of tweets where you have $15 to fill a team, but that's from the draft this time, is the $5 value going to Devon Witherspoon? Which I find quite an interesting conceptual question. I would say no. I would probably put a $4 value on him, I think.
No, but the thing is, the corner class is so deep. It's even if he was a $5 value, you probably wouldn't pick him because you'd probably get like, I don't know, Emmanuel Forbes for $1 or something like that. So I think you'd need a class with much more disparity in it for that. I don't think I picked Devon based on value for that, just because of how good the corners are.
I think that needs to, in that kind of $5 hypothetical, it needs to be someone who could legitimately change kind of your team, franchise, wins. And I think that's a quarterback or Carter or Anderson. I think they're the people who can, you've got your blue chip defensive talents and then obviously the importance of the quarterback position, right? So I just don't think Witherspoon has that same impact, even though I love him as a player.
All right, Depth Fan Man asks, who do we think is the biggest bust in the consensus projected top 20 picks? So let me give you the top 20 as my consensus board has it right now, which is slightly out of date, but it's not going to be too far away. It's Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Tyree Wilson, Christian Gonzalez, Paris Johnson, Miles Murphy, Peter Skronsky, Anthony Richardson, Devon Witherspoon, Joey Porter, Bijan Robinson, Broderick Jones, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison, Brian Brzee, Brian Branch, Lucas Van Ness.
And sorry, was the question who we think will be the highest, the biggest bust, or
Yes.
who has the biggest bust? Okay.
No. Who we think will be the biggest bust?
Is it concerning that there's about 6 or 7 that could be in contention for this? Does that just show how bad?
I think that's every year, to be honest.
Quentin Johnson for me.
Yeah.
Who?
Too many drops.
Quentin Johnston. He's a...
Oh, I'm so much lower on Johnston. It's not that I don't see it. I was actually thinking another Johnson as well, Paris Johnson. It's rare that all these tackles hit, and I guess Skoronsky, I think, will hit in terms of, I don't think he's going to bust. Darnell Wright, I'm relatively high on too, but Jones or Johnson, one of them likely isn't going to work out, right? I mean, half of the guys in the top 20 are not going to work out probably. So, yeah.
I actually think it's going to be Skronsky because someone's going to try to put him at tackle and he's going to fail. If they put him at guard, he could be Quentin Nelson level. He could be a really, really good guard. At tackle, just the arms are too short. There's too many issues for me at tackle. So if someone takes him and puts him at tackle, hopefully the Bears, then he could bust.
See, this is a close one. This for me, it's a toss-up between Will Levis and Tyree Wilson. I feel like Tyree Wilson, someone's going to take before Carter and Anderson, and then in 3 years' time, 2 of them are going to be perennial All-Pros, and one of them is going to be a rotational piece who sees the field every now and then, and Tyree's going to be that third guy, and someone's going to get in a lot of trouble over drafting him. It's either him or Levis.
So someone tell me if I'm out of touch after the last couple of weeks, but am I right in saying Wilson is probably the favourite to be the Lions' pick if they stay at 6?
It looks like it.
Unfortunately,
Currently, yes. Currently, yes, but there is a lot more traction coming that if the Texans don't get Bryce Young at 2, they will take Tyree Wilson because they think he's a better overall fit for them than Will Anderson and Jalen Carter.
The Cardinals love him as well, but it depends whether the Cardinals stay or not. So, yeah, I think so. Van Ness could be just as bad. I hate Van Ness at 6. Anyone who puts Van Ness at 6 is inciting violence.
I was going to say, I think Miles Murphy's got more chance of busting than Tyree Wilson.
I think Miles has a safer floor than all the others, which is he might not bust in the traditional sense, but he might not be worth his top 20 pick. But that's the difference there for me. I think he'll be safe.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be the biggest bust. I don't think there's much chance of him being the biggest bust, but I think he could bust. It's just not as badly as Will Levis, who will bust.
Who do we reckon the Patriots are going to take this year as their
Van Ness.
out there option? Oh, do you reckon?
So if they don't go tackle, Van Ness is the guy which I think they might go after. But yeah.
And you know, I think we've got the same answer as Zay Flowers.
While you were away, Tom, Zay Flowers has got like bona fide interest to the Patriots at 14, potentially top receiver off the board.
So I was thinking this actually the other week. Like Jahan Dotson last year, 5'9", 175, whatever, and everyone thought he might creep into the first round and then went 15 or 16, I can't remember. I feel exactly the same with Zay Flowers. It's like the same kind of player, a guy you kind of overlook because he's not 6'4" like Quentin Johnston or whatever. And yeah, I could see it happening, to be honest. Like it's too rich for me. I like him. It's too rich for me, but you can see it, especially with a little bit of special teams ability as well.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. Big Area says, got a trade question for the group. Who is the Lions' most likely trade candidate? Doesn't say up or down, just trade candidate.
Well, the one I did him in mock, the Falcons. You look behind them, the Bears won't do it. The Titans don't have the draft capital to do it. And then there's others you're like, meh, I don't want to jump back that far to some of these because I still want to get a top guy. So I generally think it's the Falcons. The way their offseason has gone, they're preparing for a run at that league. And if they think there's someone at 6 who's worth their time, be it a quarterback or a top defensive talent, I think they would offer to come up to us.
I think the Titans as well at 11.
Yeah, Titans I could see. To be honest, Eagles I could see if one of the, whether it's Wilson, whether it's Carter, if one of these guys falls and they're just like, let's go get them. I could see that happening too, but Titans, I think, definitely one of the options. Would you go back to 11?
Yes,
I would. And on the assumption that one of like the 4 names that I want at the top, so Carter, Anderson, Richardson, Young, assuming that none of them are there, then I'm definitely more interested.
I have a sneaking suspicion, and I don't know why. I think it's insane. I think Minnesota, possibly. And go all the way down to 23 and pick up 2 firsts to do it.
I won't get 2 firsts for the. You listened to Nick the other day. He said you would have to go down incredibly far to even net a first, let alone 2.
He didn't specify exactly how far.
I would rinse them for picks. No, absolutely rinse them.
And what are they coming up for?
They're coming up for QB.
They're going to trade all the way up to 6 for Will Levis.
Yeah, I think they could.
Yeah.
I think as a 13
that would
4...
get Kwesi fired.
Yeah, I know, but at the end of the day, I see a team at 13-4 who know they're frauds and are going to have a bad year and are going to be desperate. I think they're going to take some big swings this year in an attempt to stay relevant. And they know that this is Cousins' last year if they want to stay relevant as a team. So they have to have a succession plan in place, which they don't currently have. And they're not in position to do anything about this year. And because of the team they have, they're unlikely to pick in the top 8 next year. So they have to do something.
Kwesi is an analytics guy. You will not get him to overpay you for that bit. You think of the
Or you will get him
picks.
to trade down at an undervalue, though.
You think of the trades. No, because the trades, in fairness, work for both of us. It's not, they've been very fair value trades, the two that we've done with them recently. Kwesi will not get rinsed for a pick like that. He's an analytics guy, and that is massive overpay. He won't do anything like that, especially in his second year as GM.
Just fancy it. I don't know why. It's just the history there and the willingness to trade with them. I just fancy they're going to get desperate. That's all it is. But I hear what you're saying. Let's move it on. We've got a question about Kalijah Cansey and a draft as well. So Stephen Baffy said, I would be interested in hearing the panel's valuation and thoughts on Kalijah Cansey. And Ken Stouder said, what about my mock draft of 6 Anderson, 18 Cansey, cornerback, 48 Forbes, 55 Avila, 81 Overshone, 152 Evans, 183 O'Connell, 194 Scruggs. So Cansey's in both, so that's why I've kind of grouped them together. What do you think on Cansey?
Overrated, I think, would be the term. He's not. He's good, but he offers you very little against the run. Very little. And if I'm picking that high at DT, I want them to be able to be good in both disciplines. He's a really good pass rusher, don't get me wrong, but he's undersized. He's going to get worked in the middle of a field, and we don't need that. Not for us. That's my own personal thing with it. It does not offer anywhere near enough in the run game for us to make it worthwhile.
I think it's how he plays with Aleem as well. Like, what's the scheme where the two of them play together? So for me, I'd rather take. So I like Cansey, and I think he's a good player, a good prospect, and I think he's going to do well. But in terms of where's he going to be picked, I think he might be gone before 18. And also, I think there's value in terms of some of the other linemen. So, I picked Mazzy Smith. I think in the second round, and I think a lot of you've gone for Keanu Benton as well. And I think that's where the value is in that pick, not at Cansey at 18, because Cansey's going to be gone by like 48.
See, I'd be worried about a team like the Packers taking him. The Packers would make sense because they've got sort of an all-domineering, run-stuffing nose tackle in there, and you can afford to let him be more of a pass rusher. And you've seen what they tried to do with Devontae Wyatt, who was kind of similar. And their draft history of going after guys on the defense all the time. I feel like he could be a good shot for their pick.
At 48, if he was on the board, I'd have to seriously think about it, and I probably still wouldn't do it.
Oh, at 48, I'd absolutely do it. Just not at 18. That's way too rich.
He's a big boom bust pick, and I'm not starting him day one. And I'm not sure whether I think he actually has the ceiling to make it as a starter in the NFL. Like, I think he's a designated pass rusher, and I just don't want to invest in mid-round 2 pick in that. I don't see his ceiling.
It's fair.
He also freelances. And if there's one thing we learned from last year, and especially, what happened to Aubrey Pleasant, is that's not what the Lions are looking for.
He ain't a Dan Campbell guy. It's exactly right. And then there was this mock draft: Anderson, Cansey, Forbes, Avila, Overshone, Evans, O'Connell, Scruggs. What do you reckon?
Seems pretty solid.
Yeah, I like it. To be honest, I'm the same. I don't really want Cansey 18, but the rest of it I think is pretty decent. I mean, and Anderson at 6 would just be such a slam dunk because of everything about him. Obviously a really good player, but just all the risks you feel with Carter, with Richardson, even with taking a corner at 6. I just think Anderson, your bust potential is so low.
I'm just really shocked that someone's got Mark Evans at the same position I have. I'm not seeing a single person agree with me on Mark Evans so far, so that's so nice. I think he's in play for us. I do at that position.
I'm definitely not against Avila. What about Forbes at 48? Because this is a guy that I can't see at the NFL. Like, I see the talent in terms of ball production, but is the guy going to be able to stand up to NFL caliber talent?
Imagine what Justin Jefferson would do to him. Swat him aside like a fly. I mean, there's There's size issues and then there's size issues. I am traditionally on the side of the small guy. I will generally back them for the most part. I generally have, but with Forbes, it's too light. It's like 170 wet through, and if you're that small, you've got to have elite traits that kind of overcome. It's like with Witherspoon. He has elite traits. He comes from a system where they're aggressive, they're physical. He doesn't let the size. He puts wide receivers in a position where they can't use their size to best him, and he's elite at that, which is why he's still be a really good player at the next level. I just don't see it with Forbes. He's good, yes, but I don't see the elite traits that will overcome his size and his frame at the next level. And we need more than that. Just personally for me, I don't see it. Like I say, this is from a small guy believer.
I've heard other people say, like, oh, he's the cornerback version of Devonta Smith. And it's like, yeah, but one of the things we said about Devonta Smith was that he was a polished route runner who's good at avoiding contact. You can't avoid contact as a cornerback. Like, you have to hit people. And at 165 pounds, whatever he is, he's going to get broken in two.
Yeah, and it's one thing when you're talking about Devonta Smith, he had a really elite release package. So it's hard to get hands on him. To your point, you don't get a release package when you're a corner and when you're the Lions and you want to play lots of man coverage. And he's a nice kind of cover guy. But how am I going to press the kind of like the Chase Claypools of the world, right? And not that I like Claypool, but there are a lot of bigger receivers in the NFC North. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, especially with what the Packers like in their receivers. You just can't stand that guy up against Christian Watson and expect it to go well. So for me, it's not even that I think he won't necessarily succeed in the NFL. I'm not sure. But just with a team like the Lions, I just don't see it at all personally.
No. See, I agree. And that's why I want to bite back on the Elijah Cansey stuff, because he has something elite to hang his hat on while being small. He has the best first step in this class. And for me, I'm sorry, like I've had to bite my lip. I completely disagree with Riz's assessment of him. Yes, he had to freelance because that's what the scheme told him last year. I went back and watched some 2020 and 2021 tape. When he's asked to run defend, he can do it using his first step. He can be trained to run defend, and he can play in the scheme where he's told to do run fits. It's just that last year they saw his upside as a pass rusher, so he was like, right, you do what you want. We'll get a scheme where it just gets you open as possible so you can do whatever you want. You can attack the ball carrier in the backfield. He led the nation in tackles for loss for a reason. When he beats the guard, which is quite often, they're beat. The quarterback's going down, the running back's going down in the backfield. So for me, yeah, maybe 18 might be a bit too much. If we trade back, we say New Orleans want to cut for Hendon Hooker and he's there, I'm taking him. And you've got day one, you've got a designated pass rusher who eventually could start next to Alim, in my opinion. You've got a potential for Ed Oliver, who went 9 overall in his draft. If you've got that potential someone, you can get him at 18 or 24, wherever in the end of the first round. You shoot for that upside, because we've got the sort of run stuffing guys in Alim, with Bugs, with Benito this year. You've got the sort of chance to develop it and then next year insert him as a starter. So for me, I've had to bite my lip on Cansey, but I'm all for him.
I didn't realize Adeboro had pushed back to 2024 if we're talking about the quickest first step in the draft. But
Cansey looks like he teleports at times. You watch some of his tape, it looks like he teleports. For me, it's the best first step. PFF agree as well. They, for their DT, like D-line superlative soccer, they had Cansey as the best first steps. Luckily, it's not just me. It's just this year he was allowed to freelance because that's what their scheme dictated. It's like sort of you have a running back where you can do like Swift, sort of, where he's does whatever he wants, but Cansey does it and succeeds, unlike Swift, who freelances and gets tackled behind the line of scrimmage and gets us upset.
Right, I have three very quick
tackler though.
3 very quick last questions to get through. Very quick. Brent DeWitt asks, who do you take if you have a choice between Carter or Anderson at 6?
Anderson.
Carter.
Anderson for me.
I think Anderson, just because of the safeness. I think Carter's a better on-field player.
Right. I'd be absolutely delighted with either. Absolutely delighted with either.
I will do a live stream of me running around, the road down where I'm at on draft night if Will Anderson falls to us. That's how happy I'd be.
Geordie Mansion asks, do people think Holmes might finally miss in the first round, and if so, with what pick? No, from
No,
me.
No,
because
no, but
Brad picks great players. If Carter or Anderson's there at 6, people say we might trade it for ammunition. I don't think we will. He's got in this position by having a great player on the board and drafting him. And he did it with Penne. He did it with Aiden. There was no thinking about it. It was just up, get a great blue chip player on the team. If one of those 2 blue chippers is there, he'll not even consider. He will go up and get them. I don't think he'll bust.
So I
Trust
believe in him
trust
as
in
an
the villain.
evaluator, absolutely. I think this is such a weird first round, though. Like, if he takes Will Anderson, no. But there are a lot of guys where I'm like, I don't like. There's so many questions with all of these guys. Like Tyree Wilson, Carter for obvious reasons, any of the quarterbacks. But then even when you get to 18, whether it's a Porter, a Banks, Darnell Wright, like there are just questions with all of these guys. So I don't think I'm going to feel as good walking out of day one as I have the last couple of years with Sewell, which is just such a slam dunk for me. And then Hutch and JMO, obviously we weren't expecting the JMO one. So I can't imagine I'll be in a world where I feel as good as I did the last 2 years coming out of day one.
I would quickly adjust it then and say there is more chance of him busting because the talent isn't there than him misevaluating somebody. It will be a case of he's got no choice. He's going to take someone that high and they're not going to live up to expectations and there's nothing he can do about it.
All right, last question from Frank Ribble. He said, I am surprised no one picked linebacker Jack Campbell. Has he climbed into first round consideration?
no. Well, yes, and some people's boards, it's just he's the boring pick. He's basically a slightly more athletic Alexander Ole, as I said when I profiled him. You can pick him; he'll be a good Dan Campbell guy, but I hate to say, it's kind of like the Clark Cousins, Derek Carr of middle linebackers. He's good; he's a good starter, but you're always looking to upgrade. So why we have that in Anzalone already? So why just make a sideways step? Henley gives you that upgrade. He gives you that chance to get an elite coverage player, which is what you need from your linebackers these days. Look at Fred Warner, for example.
That's it. You've got to ask yourself the question: what do these players give you that you don't have already? Jack Campbell doesn't give you anything that you don't already have, whether it be Anzalone's smarts as a middle linebacker, a leader in there, whether it's Rodrigo's hard hitting ability, and he doesn't give you anything you don't have. Henley gives you something that you absolutely have zero of on this team and makes you better because of it. Jack Campbell just adds to what you've already got, and I think he's the highest floor player out of the lot of them. I think that's why he gets love, because even if he's not great, he'll still be pretty good. But I don't want that pick, especially at 18 or something like that. I want a guy who can be top tier tremendous. And I don't see that with him. And we've already got that sort of guy.
And we played 4-2-5, and the focus doesn't need to be on those 2 linebackers. It needs to be elsewhere in the D. And like I said, you're going to have to pick Campbell at 18, unless you kind of did a trade down and got him at like 28, 30 or something like that. But there's just too much elsewhere that's more pressing needs.
So, and I know this is meant to be a quick question. I've watched a little bit of Campbell, but admittedly, I haven't focused that much of my time on linebackers because I just don't see the Lions taking them that early. What I do read about Campbell is he's basically the best athlete to ever play linebacker from a relative athletic score standpoint. He's got incredible instincts. All I hear is all the things he does so well. Now, that can't be right because no one has him ranked that high. As by that high, I mean, like, no one's saying he's a top 10 player, obviously. He's always in that 30 to 60 range, probably, second round range. What are the knocks on him, or what? Like, because to me, if a guy has really good instincts and is a good player, maybe not that exciting, he's probably a middle of the road athlete. But to be such an incredible athlete, I'm just struggling to understand where all the kind of praise comes from. The athleticism is there, but no one's really going to bat for him that I can see in the media.
Because he doesn't have that one elite thing to hang his hat on. So Henley has his coverage. Trenton Simpson, who is seen as the superior athlete in this linebacker class. He's the one that's seen to have the sideline to sideline speed. Campbell's just a jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing. So he just kind of falls to the wayside as the boring pick. I can see, depending on boards, people having Henley as a linebacker one, Campbell as linebacker one, or Simpson as linebacker one, or even some boards as Drew Sanders is one because he's got the athleticism and the upside. Campbell's he's got the low floor, and so for people, they're shooting always for the upside at linebacker. That's why the Ravens a couple of years ago picked Patrick Queen, the converted running back, who hasn't worked out for them, but when you're picking that high, you're shooting for the elite, and Campbell's never going to be that. He's always going to be like middle linebacker 16 in the NFL. Middle of the road, you're never going to get anything amazing from him. So people are shooting for that upside.
I'd low key be excited if we drafted Drew Sanders. Yeah, I mean, he has that it potential, which Jack Campbell doesn't have. But it's funny Tom mentions that because it's been blown up recently about how Jack Campbell's training with Luke Keithley, and you're like, are they trying to get that image in people's head that he's the next Luke Keithley? And it's just like, no one's going to be the next Luke Keithley. But I think people are just really focused. And it's the Iowa thing. It's like, oh, he's he's determined. It's like, not every player who's gritty and determined is a Dan Campbell guy. There's a difference between some of them. And yeah, he just doesn't have the it factor that guys like Sanders and Henley have. Their ceilings are far vaster than what his is. And that's what you're going for with your early picks.
All right, I haven't seen any more questions in the chat, and we've gone through quite a lot. So anything you guys want to chat on before we sign off?
Can I ask one quick question? So obviously, like Weatherspoon is like seen as like quite a consensus take for the Lions. I'm a bit surprised that no one took a look at the other two Illinois defensive backs. Is it Sidney Brown and Jatavius Martin? I just wondered if any of you guys had considered them, because I know like I did, but I just couldn't find a spot for them.
Martin, would be there around the Jamie range for me. They're quite similar players in terms of ranking for me. Both play the same position. It's just Martin's a slightly better athlete, but Jamie's a bit more of the character guy. So obviously I'll homered and pick Jamie, but I'd happily take Martin. He's definitely he's one of like the 4 or 5 guys that if we drafted him, I'd happily kick Will Harris out and to let them take his space because they've got more upside, even though it incurs like 2.2 million a dead cap.
Oh, damn it. I meant to say that when drafting Branch, that we could kick Will Harris out with him and CJG here. See, I'm not that biased. No, there is between like picks 50 and 150, there are like 30, 40 guys I'm really high. There's a plethora of people you enjoy in there. And unfortunately, the Illinois DBs just fall in a very big group and you can only pick so many of them. But they're coming from a great system. So I like them. It's just that there's lots of players to like in that little group there. And yeah, only so many can be picked.
I think for me, they both fall in the range between 81 and 152. Both of those guys, I kind of just don't want to take at 81. So they're just in no man's land. If we trade down into the early hundreds, as Ant did, then they'd be guys at the top of my board if they were still there. I think Quan will be Quan Martin, but not Sidney Brown. But I still think that, for me, they're not prospects I'd want at 81. So, all right. If that's everything, please don't forget to catch up with the College Pod, because there's going to be a really good one with the Mac guy that we've got on our Discord channel. If you haven't joined our Discord, please do. The link is in the description, in the live chat of YouTube and Twitch. Thanks for sticking with us this long. I know it's been a long pod, as it always is at this time of year, and well, the time of year doesn't make any difference anyway. But thanks to you guys for joining us, and thanks to the panel for a really great show once again. Only a couple more until the draft now, so we're on the home stretch. It's going to be a great show, our biggest one yet, and I'm trying to make the user experience and the graphics and what have you a bit more fun. So hopefully that'll be good. If you've got any suggestions on the Twitch chat for redemption of channel points, especially during the draft, because I'm happy to do drinking forfeits or something, I don't know, whatever. Get your thoughts into us. Email in the description of YouTube, or you know where our socials are. Otherwise, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Cheers all.